Chapter 1000. My wife's looking for me. Save your daughter? Qin Hao frowned. Yes. Iron Crutchley nodded seriously. Do you know the top 3 in the Emperor Martial Tournament? Will I have the opportunity to choose the supreme treasure that Emperor Shao bestowed for the competition, the Tongxin Mirror? Heart-connecting mirror? What is that? Qin Hao had no idea. He had never heard of it before. Under the illumination of the transparent heart mirror, it can cleanse a martial artist's physique and remove the impurities in their body. This is its apparent advantage. Another use is that it has the effect of opening spiritual cavities. It can allow those who are born slow-witted or those who lack intelligence to return to normal. But actually, the most powerful part of the transparent heart mirror is that it can stimulate a martial artist's origin spirit, forcing the martial artist's origin spirit out in advance. Iron Crutchley listed the functions of the mirror one by one. His daughter was born with mental retardation. She was already 10 years old, but her IQ was only that of a 3-year-old. Even after he grew up, he might not be able to become a normal person. Therefore, he needed to participate in the competition and get into the top 3. Even if he only got 3rd place, he would still have the opportunity to ask for the mystic mirror to open his daughter's spiritual cavities and remove her mental retardation. As for stimulating a martial artist's source spirit, the prerequisite is that the martial artist has to have a source spirit. If you don't have a source spirit, it's useless to use the heart-connecting treasure mirror. Iron Crutchley looked at the roof, and the image of a cute little girl's round face appeared in his mind. He couldn't bear it. He had tried his best, but in fact, Qin Hao was even more clear about the problem of a martial artist's source spirit. A portion of people were born with soul power bestowed by the heavens. They were extremely lucky. Of course, these lucky people were only a minority. And among the minority of people, the vast majority of martial artists' primordial spirits had to be opened after birth. Through some fortuitous encounters, or when they were in a life or death situation, their primordial spirits would be activated. The conditions for awakening were very dangerous, and the success rate was less than 10%. But if he used the heart-connecting treasure mirror, he could immediately activate his source spirit. From this, it could be seen that the heart-connecting treasure mirror was indeed a treasure. Even if it was found that the disciple did not have the power of the soul source, the mirror could be used to strengthen the disciple's physique. For a large family or sect, it was undoubtedly a treasure for prosperity. I see. Qin Hao nodded. The fact that Shao Yi was willing to take out this treasure as a dowry was enough to show how much importance he attached to Shao Han. However, Qin Hao wasn't too curious about the mirror. Whatever the mirror could do, he could do as well. Regardless of whether it was strengthening one's physique or refining pills to open spiritual cavities. Even awakening a martial artist's primordial spirit was not a difficult matter. Moreover, when I help others awaken their soul, there is no pain, no residue, and the process is pleasant. It's a pity that I can't fight for my daughter in my current condition. Tai Guili covered his eyes with a pained expression. In front of Qin Hao, he couldn't help but cry. This was the pitiful heart of all parents. Hey, cripple, let me tell you a piece of good news. I just heard from that high-level Yuan Venerate Senior that Brother Qin Hao can heal all your injuries in a short time. You still have a chance to continue fighting. But I sigh. Gongshu Jian couldn't help but interject. When he thought of his broken mecha, how could he not understand? He wasn't as lucky as Tai Guili. His mecha wasn't sick, so he couldn't save it even after losing it. What? Tai Guili raised his head in shock and looked at Qin Hao in disbelief. His expression seemed to be asking, "Can you really heal me? Can you let me continue fighting?" Qin Hao smiled and nodded. He was about to say that he could. At this time, an excited shout came from outside the tavern. It passed through the walls that had been renovated with strong soundproofing ability and reached Qin Hao's ears. "Princess Jingyue has arrived. Come and receive her quickly." The voice was sharp and sounded like a duck. However, it wasn't housekeeper Gongsun. It was Tsyogwa's imitation. As soon as Tsyogwa finished speaking, the Su family members were frightened. More than 200 people rushed out nervously and knelt at the entrance of the tavern. Sorry, my wife is looking for me. As for your injuries, we will talk about them later. You all should have a good rest first. Qin Hao didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out of the door, leaving behind an unscrupulous figure. Xiao Han, Chen Wanqin and a large group of people hurriedly walked out of the tavern hall. The small Good People Tavern had now become a very popular place. Because of Qin Hao, dozens of tall buildings had sprung up overnight. It was as lively as a market. There were all kinds of things being sold. These unscrupulous merchants were selling things while spreading rumors that they knew the story of the handsome man from Western Liang and Princess Jingyue. There were also some small things like bad books and magazines that were spread in the imperial city through his hand. There were things like the story of the handsome man from Western Liang and Princess Jingyue, the story of the white-haired crazy demon and Her Highness Jingyue, and so on. The imperial guards couldn't stop them at all. Sister Wanqin. Xiao Han was wearing a clean ink-blue floral dress. It was colder at night in the northern borderline. She also had a thick white velvet cloak on her back. She looked very dignified and had the aura of a princess. When the two met, Xiao Han held Chen Wanqin's hand and was very happy. Is this the daughter of Emperor Xiao and the ex-girlfriend of Big Brother? Yi Shuihan was hiding in a corner with his hands in his sleeves. He stared at Xiao Han with a sneaky look. However, he only felt her temperament and didn't dare to look up and down. What ex-girlfriend? Sister Xiao Han is Big Brother's fiancée. Tsyogwa poked Yi Shuihan with his arm, and then looked around with fear. Who knew if Qin Hao would suddenly appear? It would be bad if Big Brother heard them talking in private. So beautiful! Xing couldn't help but praise. My cousin has good taste. Qin Yun was very envious. Your taste is not bad either. Next to Qin Yun, Aku's blood-red eyes suddenly flashed. It was very scary. The wasteland had been integrated and the Qin people and the vampires had reconciled. Therefore, the relationship between the two was immediately confirmed. At present, Aku was Qin Yun's fiancé. If I could do it all over again, I want to return the goods. Looking at Aku's blood-red eyes and two sharp teeth between her red lips, the corner of Qin Yun's mouth twitched. What did you say? Aku pinched Qin Yun's chest angrily and forced a handful of dog food into the mouths of Tsyogwa and Yi Shuihan next door. I miss Xiao Li so much. Tsyogwa raised his head and looked at the starry sky. I think Xiao Li's sister Xiao Zhu is not bad. A stream of saliva flowed out from the corner of Yi Shuihan's mouth. Then, the two of them looked at each other and made vulgar sounds. At this time, Qin Hao walked out of the tavern and greeted Xiao Han with a smile. Why are you here? As a princess, it was not appropriate for her to show her face in public, especially at a time like the imperial martial competition. Thinking back to yesterday when Qin Hao hugged Xiao Han in his arms and almost caused the hundreds of thousands of Daliao's imperial guards to surround and kill him, Qin Hao felt his scalp go numb. I miss you, of course I want to see you. Xiao Han let go of Chen Wanqin's hand and walked over to Qin Hao like a spoiled little girl. Then I will accompany you to relax. Chapter 1001. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. Crimson Red's descent. Xiao Han smiled knowingly and jumped up lightly. Then Qin Hao rose into the sky on his sword, holding the beautiful woman's hand. Like an immortal couple, they toured the prosperous imperial city under the bright moon under the starry sky. So happy! This scene made others envious. Looking at the backs of the two leaving, Xing Er's eyes were full of longing. She didn't expect Qin Hao to treat her like Xiao Han. She only wanted to accompany Qin Hao as a little maidservant. That was enough. What are you looking at? Are you not full yet? After a long time, Yi Shuihan came back to his senses when he couldn't see Qin Hao and Xiao Han anymore. He was inexplicably irritable and yelled at the kneeling Su family members. "Oh, we are indeed not full yet. Let's go back and continue eating." The first elder of the Su family hurriedly got up and led his family members back to the tavern. He couldn't afford to offend Yi Shuihan. However, the first elder misunderstood Yi Shuihan's meaning. Yi Shuihan yelled, "Dog food." The bright moonlight shrouded the imperial city of Daliao, covering the entire imperial city with a layer of pale silver light. In the night sky, the stars were shining brightly like diamonds, decorating the ancient sky. Qin Hao released a powerful mind and carefully controlled the great void sword under his feet, moving forward at a moderate speed. Behind him, Xiao Han's face was full of warmth. With a smile on her lips, she wrapped her arms tightly around Qin Hao's waist. This scene reminded the two of them of the day when they first arrived at Fengli Temple. That day, Qin Hao swept the outer sect, stepped into the inner sect, beat the deacons, slapped the elders, and made the 10 inner sect elders of Fengli Temple, the number 1 sect in the south of Jiang Kingdom, raise the sky curtain. In the end, Great Elder Chu Nan played a dirty trick and used a pebble to forcefully disperse the sky, causing Qin Hao and Xiao Han to accidentally fall. Qin Hao decisively threw out his purple meteorite sword and borrowed its gliding momentum to escape with Xiao Han. The scene at that time was very beautiful, similar to what was happening now. The difference was that when he first came to Fengli Temple, Qin Hao's cultivation was still shallow, and he could not use qi to control the sword like he did now. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. When Qin Hao recalled this, he couldn't help but laugh. He felt a sharp pain. Xiao Han opened her small canine teeth and bit Qin Hao on the back of his neck. Qin Hao was shocked to be attacked. He could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. "We haven't seen each other for 5 years. Not only has your cultivation improved, even your teeth force has become so sharp." Qin Hao endured the pain and lovingly pinched Xiao Han's face. "Humph. If you dare to hide it from me again, lie to me, and fight with a group of desperados alone, I won't just bite you once. I'll leave teeth marks for you to remember forever. You can't do this again." Xiao Han was angry. She blamed Qin Hao for dealing with the Lanchuan mountain range incident. She was really afraid. She knew that Qin Hao had become blind because of this. This was the price Qin Hao paid for Xiao Han's safety. But Xiao Han would rather be the one who became blind. She would rather die by Qin Hao's side than see him become blind. "I swear, I won't do it again," Qin Hao said. Even now, he still had lingering fears. It was fine if she did not mention it, but now that she did, Qin Hao was a little embarrassed. He slowly turned around. "Xiao Han, I have to explain something to you. Actually, the eldest miss of the Jiang mansion, you don't have to explain. I've already explained it for you." Xiao Han interrupted Qin Hao and pursed her lip. "And he even used the name Li Bai? He became the fiancé of the eldest miss of the Jiang mansion. You really know how to play." However, Xiao Han had already announced in front of Riverview that Li Bai belonged to her. No, she was helping Qin Hao explain his identity. She could tolerate anything in the world. Only Qin Hao. Xiao Han would never back down. When Riverview learned the truth, he was very flustered at first. How could he dare to compete with Emperor Zhao's daughter for a man? Moreover, Qin Hao had never agreed to be the son-in-law of the Jiang family. It was just Riverview's wishful thinking. If anyone was to blame for this, it was actually old Master Zhang's fault. In short, it was all in the past. Xiao Han had handled everything properly. With such a virtuous wife, what more can a husband ask for? Qin Hao sighed and hugged Xiao Han's waist tightly. "I didn't agree to marry you." Xiao Han slapped Qin Hao's hand away and turned her face to the side. She had a look that said, "I'm very angry, very angry, very angry." Seeing this, Qin Hao took out a white silk scarf and held it in front of Xiao Han. You tore this from your battle skirt when you were gambling with Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan at Blue River Mountain. In the end, I got it from General Xiao Xiao. I'm first, Qin Hao said with a serious face. Xiao Han couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat. She wanted to cry. She hammered Qin Hao's chest and said, "You know I'm soft-hearted." After saying this, she plunged into Qin Hao's arms. Ha ha! Qin Hao hugged Xiao Han tightly. In Denda's words, if you want to coax your wife, you have to have a unique skill. Brother Qin Hao, are you really blind? Letting go of Qin Hao's waist, Xiao Han touched the corner of Qin Hao's eyes with pity. It's only temporary. It won't take long for me to recover. Qin Hao said. You're not lying to me? Xiao Han asked again with a serious face. Qin Hao immediately pointed to the back of his neck. The blood on his neck hadn't dried yet. Phew! Xiao Han breathed a sigh of relief. If Qin Hao couldn't see anymore, she would hate herself for the rest of her life. When she lowered her head, Xiao Han couldn't help but be attracted by the great void sword under her feet. The sword was very beautiful. It was emerald in color and had flames around it. Its aura was quite strong. This sword doesn't look like the purple meteorite sword from before. Xiao Han looked at it for a long time. Yes, it's my natal spirit weapon, Qin Hao said. He had forged it with his mind for 3 days and 3 nights. It was not an exaggeration to call it his natal spirit weapon. Oh right. After I left Mount Lanchuan, you must have been looking for me for a long time. Did you find a very special arrow? One of the sunset arrows, Crimson, killed Xiao Tai's second commander, Jiaojiu. At that time, Qin Hao's life was hanging by a thread. He didn't have the ability to retrieve it from the corpse. Later, when he was recuperating in the Su family, Qin Hao tried to communicate with Crimson, but he didn't get any response. This matter was buried in his heart for a long time. Qin Hao guessed that the arrow should have been taken by Old Master Jiang or Xiao Han's subordinate. Arrow? Is it a crimson arrow with a strong murderous aura? Xiao Han really saw it. Chapter 1002. Translator. Naobo Studio Editor. Naobo Studio Gensher surnamed Xiao. Where is it? Is it in Jiang Bida's house? Qin Hao was pleasantly surprised. The stone hanging in his heart finally fell to the ground. Look at how happy you are. It's as if you've picked up 5 million mysterious crystals. It's in my room. Xiao Han looked at Qin Hao strangely. Was there a need to be so happy? But it was quite strange. When they found a special arrow on the Jiao's body, many imperial guards went up to pull it out. They felt that the arrow was extraordinary and wanted to take it for themselves. However, no one got within 3 meters of the Jiao's body. They were immediately shaken by a terrifying murderous aura. Those who were mildly affected felt a splitting headache. Those who were severely affected screamed crazily as if they had seen hell. This directly alarmed Jiang Bida and the warlord. The two of them tried, but they couldn't get close to the body. With the warlord's profound cultivation, he could forcibly remove the arrow. However, if he did that, the arrow might self-destruct. The warlord sensed that the arrow was psychic. It was a rare high-level spiritual artifact. In the end, he didn't have the heart to destroy it. At that time, this matter really stumped everyone. Strangely, when Xiao Han was the one to remove the arrow, crimson red flew out of the wound and landed in Xiao Han's palm like an obedient baby. This made the Daliao soldiers think that Xiao Han was a goddess. What kind of arrow is that? It's very clingy and restless. It flies around my room all day as if it has a life of its own. Xiao Han actually wanted to say that Crimson Red was like a clingy child. Of course, it was only clingy to her. Even K-Er couldn't get close to Crimson Red. This, Qin Hao was shocked. He was deeply shocked by this, because he never thought that Crimson Red would do such an outrageous and strange thing. Even when Qin Hao was at his peak in his previous life, Crimson Red didn't have the qualifications to be psychic. Take me to see it. Qin Hao was a little anxious. Seeing was believing. Are you sure? Xiao Han said. Hurry! Qin Hao urged. All right, I'll take you to see my father. Xiao Han pulled Qin Hao behind him and stepped on the great void divine sword. Powerful primordial level vital qi filled the soles of his feet. A bright flowing light pierced through the night sky and headed straight for Daliao's most solemn palace. Hey, wait a minute. I want to see that arrow. Why did you bring me to see Emperor Xiao? Now, Qin Hao was a little anxious. Since you're hugging my waist, it's not up to you, Xiao Han playfully said. Whoosh! A powerful light descended from the sky, falling straight into the hall of vast thinking in the imperial palace. Who is it? Oh, so it's the princess. Who's the guy hiding behind the princess skirt? How dare you? Hand over your life. Get out of the way. Without waiting for the palace guards to draw their swords, Xiao Han angrily grabbed Qin Hao by the collar and dragged him inside. Wow, when did our Princess Jing Yu become so bold and unrestrained? A person was stupefied as he looked at her. Smack! His captain raised his hand and slapped him. The princess is bold and unrestrained. Do you want to die? Yes, 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 the princess is bold and unrestrained. Sister, you're back. Did you see him? Sensing Xiao Han's aura, Kair was chewing on a pastry and holding a candy in her hand as she jumped out of the hall. As soon as she looked up, the pastry fell out of her mouth. It's you indeed. Mr. Li, ha ha. Little Kair, hello. Actually, I'm Mr. Qin. Being grabbed by the collar by Xiao Han, Qin Hao slipped and almost tripped. Before he could finish his greeting, he was dragged into the inner courtyard. Wow, there's a good show to watch. Kair was excited. She quickly stuffed the candy into her mouth and followed quickly. Creak. Pushing the door open, Xiao Han threw Qin Hao into the room. Gulp. Qin Hao swallowed his saliva and looked at Xiao Han, who was taking off her cloak and jacket. Her exquisite curves made Qin Hao's mouth go dry. No, there's no need to be in such a hurry, right? Although 5 years is a long time, we've already grown up. According to the wedding date written by father and mother, it's indeed time to. What are you talking about? Xiao Han couldn't help but find it funny. She rolled her eyes at Qin Hao and then pointed her slender finger at Qin Hao's back. Stunned, a sharp force swept across the back of his head. A murderous aura spread and chilled him to the bone. An unprecedented fatal aura forced Qin Hao to unleash his full cultivation. He released his level 6 imperial aura without holding back. Red lotus flames surged around his body. Amidst the flames, Qin Hao's fist was covered in dragon scales. He was about to retaliate with a punch. When he turned around, he saw a 3-foot-long scarlet arrow floating in front of him. The arrowhead was aimed at Qin Hao's forehead. Whoosh! Qin Hao heaved a sigh of relief. No wonder the pressure was so strong. It was the sunset scarlet arrow. Come back! Qin Hao dispersed the power of his 2 souls and held his palms flat. His tone was very calm as he muttered. It was as if the arrow would fall into his palm obediently in the next second like before. However, it didn't. In fact, it did fall. But before it completely fell, the arrow shot out with a whoosh, abandoning Qin Hao and flying to Xiao Han's side. As Xiao Han stretched out her hand, the scarlet arrow turned into a docile little lamb and slowly fell into her palm. It even rubbed against her palm to show its loyalty. This was undoubtedly a great mockery to Qin Hao. You bastard who values a lover over a friend. Qin Hao couldn't help but lose face. He couldn't help but point at the scarlet arrow and curse. Chapter 1003. The father-in-law meets the son-in-law. Qin Hao's eyebrows trembled. In my previous life, I spent 300 years to train you, refine you, and raise you with my blood essence. How dare I rebel against you today? Can't I deal with you? He was about to use the sunset mental cultivation method to forcefully remove the arrow. As Kair spoke, a thought appeared in his mind. Abandon? No. 300 years of companionship. How could an abandonment sever his friendship with Qi Hong? There must be something fishy about this. Qin Hao dispersed the sunset mental cultivation method and spread his consciousness over Xiao Han's body to sense carefully. He sensed that Xiao Han's aura was not normal. Faintly, there was a mysterious force that was moving her vitality to a certain location. If Qin Hao recovered his vision and opened his red lotus fiery eyes, he would discover that Xiao Han had gathered a small amount of vitality in her crescent moon pendant. Through the crescent moon pendant it was transmitted to the Qi Hong arrow. Under the nourishment of Xiao Han's vitality, the arrow underwent some subtle changes and seemed to be strengthened. In fact, whether it was Xiao Han or the arrow, the changes in both were very weak. Ordinary people would not be able to detect them. Even Xiao Han herself did not notice it. Qin Hao could only vaguely sense a trace of it through his powerful spiritual energy. This made him very surprised. He could not explain it. Why would Xiao Han's vitality be absorbed by Qi Hong when it passed through a certain location? Clearly, Qi Hong stayed by Xiao Han's side because of this. It could obtain a metamorphosis power from Xiao Han. If there was a god that descended from the god realm, he would definitely give Qin Hao a reasonable explanation. Even the god of the god realm would cry bitterly and hug Xiao Han's thigh, becoming the second obedient baby that Qi Hong shot out like an arrow. This was because Xiao Han's vitality was not ordinary. It was the Divine Emperor's Qi with the highest bloodline in the god realm. The Divine Emperor's Qi could transform a spiritual weapon into a divine weapon, a true divine weapon. Unfortunately, Qin Hao still could not break through the barrier of the god realm. The Divine Emperor's Qi was a level of power that far exceeded his knowledge in both his previous and current life. I don't care. Qin Hao racked his brains, but he couldn't figure it out. He casually waved his hand and said, "Let Qi Hong stay. We'll talk about it after I finish the monarch martial competition and become the champion." Although he didn't know why Qi Hong liked to stick to Xiao Han, Qin Hao knew that Qi Hong didn't abandon him. Crimson Red's spirituality was content. Hearing its master's words, it immediately flew out of Xiao Han's palm and danced around Qin Hao's body. After circling around him 3 times, it returned to Xiao Han's hand, as if it was sending a message to Qin Hao. "Master is so good. I won't abandon you." Ha ha ha, boasting. If you can't take it back, then you can't take it back. Using the Imperial Martial Competition as an excuse. Even if it is the Emperor Martial Competition, do you think you can snatch the championship just because you want to? Kei pointed at Qin Hao and mocked him. She lifted her rosy little face and said, "Let's not talk about the mysterious top person on the Emperor Martial roll. I'm afraid even Zhou Wudao will be enough for you. It will be difficult for you to marry my sister." What she meant was that Qin Hao might not even be able to defeat Zhou Wudao, let alone challenge the top person on the Emperor Martial roll. Based on Kei's current expression, the top person on the Emperor Martial roll had a heaven-defying cultivation base. Xiao Han, who was at the side, listened quietly and didn't interrupt. She had a faint smile on her face, as she still believed in Qin Hao's ability. Especially when Qin Hao had unleashed his full power just now. On the surface, he looked like a level 6 Yuan monarch, but his aura was so imposing that even 100 level 6 Yuan monarchs couldn't compare to Qin Hao's. "Whether I can become the champion or not depends on your eyes. As for Zhou Wudao, forgive me for being impolite and arrogant, but he is nothing in front of me," Qin Hao said proudly. Kei immediately turned her mouth away. "Young Master Qin, Emperor Xiao invites you in." At that moment, a deep and powerful voice was heard from outside the room. Xiao Han frowned. As expected, once she brought big brother Qin Hao here, her father wouldn't let go of the opportunity to meet him in private. "Emperor Xiao?" Qin Hao's eyes widened as he looked at Xiao Han. "Why are you looking at me?" "He didn't invite me." Xiao Han turned around and placed Qi Hong on the arrow rack. However, as soon as she released her hand, Qi Hong immediately floated up and stuck to Xiao Han like a plaster. Xiao Han couldn't shake it off. What I mean is, why don't we go together? This was the first time he was meeting his father-in-law in private, so Qin Hao felt that it would be better if Xiao Han accompanied him. Young Master Qin, Emperor Xiao said that he wants to see you alone. The powerful voice was heard again from outside the room. All right. Qin Hao had no choice but to put his hands behind his back and step out of the door. He had to face what he had to face alone. Judging from Xiao Han's attitude, it was obvious that she wasn't going to accompany him. However, I've never been afraid of anyone. The moment Qin Hao stepped out of the room, he turned around and kissed Xiao Han's ear at lightning speed. Ha ha ha! Qin Hao laughed at Kei proudly. Aren't you ashamed? Kei quickly covered her eyes with her hands. Xiao Han was also angry. Kei was underage. How could you do this? She waved her fist and wanted to teach Qin Hao a lesson. However, Qin Hao took a step forward and dashed out, kissing her and running away. Uncle Xiaoming, that bad guy bullied my sister. Kei chased after him and pointed at Qin Hao in the courtyard. I didn't see anything. A mighty middle-aged general in the courtyard said calmly with an extremely old-fashioned expression. Then, he strode out of the hall of thought. Ha ha! Chapter 1004. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin the first test of father-in-law. After leaving the Hall of Intelligence, Qin Hao followed Xiaoming to the Imperial Martial Hall. Along the way, they met patrolling guards who bowed respectfully to Xiaoming. Only when Xiaoming and Qin Hao were far away did the guards continue their patrol. It was enough to prove that Xiaoming's position in the palace was not ordinary. However, after walking for a while, Qin Hao noticed that the surroundings were getting quieter and quieter, and they met fewer people. This was not normal. If he guessed correctly, Xiaoming was leading him to a side path. Uncle, you are Xiaoming, right? I heard the guards call you that just now. May I ask, where are you taking me? Qin Hao could not help but ask. We will take a small path and enter the Imperial Martial Hall from the back door. Xiaoming said frankly, dispelling Qin Hao's suspicions. Why can't I go through the front door when Emperor Xiao wants to see me? Qin Hao stopped and his face darkened. Is he looking down on me? Qin Hao, your identity is very special. You should know what Northern Yan and Northern Qi will think if Emperor Xiao wants to see you in private. What will Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan think? What will the people of Medicine, Emperor Pavilion, and Zhanyue Mansion think? Xiaoming stopped and said, Also, do you know Xiao Guang? I am his teacher. Xiao Guang was the leader of the 4 statue-like knights who accompanied Xiao Han to the Blue River Mountain. When Qin Hao disguised himself as Li Bai, he had met Xiao Guang. Xiao Guang was extremely loyal to Xiao Han. As the teacher who nurtured Xiao Guang, Xiaoming only wanted to tell Qin Hao that he would not harm him. I understand. Qin Hao sighed and continued walking. During the imperial martial competition, it was not appropriate for him to meet Emperor Xiao openly. It would make it seem like his father-in-law was giving him special treatment. If word got out, the outside world would gossip. There was nothing wrong with Emperor Zhao's way of doing things, and he did not look down on Qin Hao. Seeing Qin Hao continue to follow, a trace of treachery flashed in the corner of Xiaoming's mouth. He concealed it extremely well as he thought to himself, others are gossiping? Emperor Xiao is not afraid of those bastards. Qin family boy, there is something fun waiting for you. After leading Qin Hao to the back door of the Imperial Martial Hall, Xiaoming did not even give Qin Hao a chance to thank him before Xiaoming hurriedly turned and left. At this moment, there was a narrow door in front of Qin Hao. In front of the small door stood a tall and sturdy man. He was as tall as Qi Dexiong, perhaps even taller than Qi Dexiong. The giant man's body was too big. His upper body was bare, and his frightening fists were wearing iron gloves. He leaned against the door frame, completely blocking the door. accompanied by a snoring sound that entered Qin Hao's ears. He understood that there was someone dozing off in front of him. Was. Friend, please make way, Qin Hao said in a low voice. The big Xiong did not respond at all and continued to snore. Friend, please move. Qin Hao raised his voice. However, the big Xiong who was blocking the door still had his eyes closed. His arms were crossed as he slept soundly. Sparkling saliva was even dripping from the corner of his mouth. Sorry, I was rude. Qin Hao felt that as long as the big Xiong was not deaf, he should have been woken up long ago. It was obvious that he was pretending to be asleep. In that case, he had no choice but to take action. While speaking, Qin Hao used his hand to pull the big Xiong, trying to pull him to the side. However, the big Xiong did not budge. This surprised Qin Hao slightly. He knew better than anyone else how strong his physical body was. That pull just now had the force of at least 250,000 caddies of the sacred suppressing stone. Even a peak Yuan monarch would have been pulled 3 meters away. Haha, I understand. Is this a test from Emperor Xiao? Qin Hao sneered. Xiao Ming had brought him to the small door and even asked an expert to block the way in advance. It was obviously intentional. It was not difficult to guess that this was deliberately arranged by Xiao Yi. As the saying went, when a son-in-law visited for the first time, the father-in-law would not treat him well. Qin Hao felt that given his friendship with Xiao Yi, his father should be exempt from these customs. However, he did not expect Emperor Xiao to be like this too. All right, let's do it. I'm not afraid of you. In that case, I don't need to show mercy. Qin Hao silently circulated his dragon soul power and activated 15% of his dragon soul power. In an instant, dense dragon scales covered the surface of his fist. With a burst of strength, the muscles on his arms swelled rapidly as he punched the big Xiong's chest. His fist streaked across the air, creating a golden ripple. Boom! A dull sound was heard. Qin Hao felt that he had hit a big piece of meat. He had hit it. Before he could rejoice, shock filled Qin Hao's face. 15% of his dragon soul power was enough to send the iron-backed demonic lizard king's 150-foot body flying. However, the big Xiong did not move at all. Haha! A burst of laughter came from the study of the Imperial Martial Hall. Xiao Yi was wearing a plain robe and squatting on the ground, peeling peanuts and throwing them into his mouth one by one. Behind him, 3 figures stood in the room. One of them was a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had one hand on Xiao Yi's desk, while the other hand held a brush and was drawing on a piece of paper. No one knew what he was drawing. The other 2 figures were old men with white hair and beard. The 2 old men were holding wine jugs and happily clinking them. Chapter 1005. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Taichi Sect. If martialists from the great families of the Northern Territory were present, they would definitely be shocked and kowtow to these 2 old men. These 2 were called Young Crouching Dragon and Phoenix. They were reclusive geniuses with extremely high cultivation bases in the Northern Territory. One was good at inscriptions while the other was good at refining. Both of them were peak monarchs and half-step thearch. However, they had actually been recruited by Xiao Yi to be his subordinate. 2 words. Childish. In response to Qin Hao's punch towards the burly man, the old man in the yellow Taoist robe disdainfully extended a finger and then poured another mouthful of wine into his mouth. Mr. Crouching Dragon, are you very confident in Hu Qi? Xiao Yi did not turn his head. He was still casually peeling peanut. Hu Qi had originally been an unknown general in his army who had been discovered by Young Crouching Dragon and Phoenix. After realizing that this person was brave and valiant, he had been promoted step by step and was now the commander of the Tiger Leopard Army. Hu Qi is a level 5 Yuan Venerate with innate divine strength and bravery. Qin Hao is too naive to think that he can shake Hu Qi off with a single punch. Young Crouching Dragon said proudly. He was wearing an earth-colored robe. He and Crouching Dragon had discovered Hu Qi among the soldiers, so they naturally knew how capable he was. Zhou Wudao, who was ranked third on the Emperor Martial list, had no more than a 60% chance of defeating Hu Qi under normal circumstances if he did not use his ultimate techniques and trump cards. In other words, Hu Qi could fight Zhou Wudao on par with him. It seems like it won't be that easy for my son-in-law to reach the Emperor Martial Hall. Xiao Yi clapped his hands to get rid of the peanut crumbs and got up to smile at the two of them. Young Crouching Dragon and Phoenix immediately raised their noses as if to say, "Of course. How could Qin Hao pass through so easily with Hu Qi blocking the way? He might not even have the ability to pass. If Qin Hao could not even pass the gate, he would not be qualified to meet Emperor Xiao, let alone become Daliao's son-in-law. This was just a test to enter the gate. In the outside world, Yuan venerate powerhouse. After this punch, Qin Hao roughly gauged the other party's cultivation base. Not only was he a Yuan venerate powerhouse, but he wasn't an ordinary Yuan venerate either. Thus, he couldn't help but be surprised. Hu Qi was still snoring with his arms crossed. He didn't even look at Qin Hao, showing a hint of disdain. Qin Hao's face suddenly turned ugly. I activated 15% of my dragon force, but it didn't have any effect on this person. His physical strength and strength must far surpass those of the same level. Qin Hao frowned inwardly. This was a little tricky. At this time, he suddenly had an idea and shouted, "There's wine, wine? Where's the wine?" Hearing this, Hu Qi's closed eyes suddenly opened wide. He looked around, and his body, which was blocking the small door, could not help but reveal a gap. Good chance. Qin Hao was delighted. He was about to use the water wind step to dodge the other party. However, before Qin Hao could move, Hu Qi, who had sobered up, quickly raised his hand and blocked Qin Hao's chest with his thick arms. He glared fiercely at Qin Hao and said, "You brat, how dare you lie to me?" F***ck. Qin Hao was surprised once again. He had originally thought that this person's aura was heavy and his breathing was rough. He was definitely big and had explosive power, but his movements were slow. However, even his reaction was very fast. Qin Hao scratched his head awkwardly and said, You're awake? Excuse me, I'm passing by." "Hee hee. Don't give me that, brat. Unless I lie down, you won't be able to pass through this door," Hu Qi said in a low, muffled voice. He had received military orders to guard this place and not allow anyone to pass. Military orders had to be obeyed, and dereliction of duty would result in death. Guarding this place for a day was enough. If he succeeded, Hu Qi would be promoted. Qin Hao's mouth twitched subconsciously. There was no way to resolve this peacefully. The man in front of him was definitely a roadblock that Xiao Yi deliberately set up. If Qin Hao could not pass through, it would mean that he was not qualified to enter the Imperial Martial Hall, much less marry Xiao Han. If Qin Hao turned around and left now, he would definitely be mocked by Xiao Yi. For Xiao Han's sake and my own sake, I have to defeat this person. Qin Hao understood everything in his mind. However, it was not easy to successfully pass through. The other party did not even frown after receiving 15% of the dragon force. He was rather strong. 15% of the dragon force was already Qin Hao's limit in his human form. If he strengthened it any further, dragon scales would grow on his arms. When the scales reached 50 and above, he would enter beast mode. In that state, Qin Hao would be exceptionally bloodthirsty and lose himself. For example, when he fought Tian Buguang in the Medicine Valley, he would have to fight to the death once he entered beast mode. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Qin Hao would not excite the dragon force too much. Moreover, he did not want to expose his trump card at this time. This was a bit difficult. Obviously, it would be difficult to defeat the man in front of him without transforming. "Kid, I know you are from Xiliang. Don't be delusional. The time you spent with our princess was just to reminisce. As for the current you are no longer worthy of our princess. I don't mind telling you that my strength is enough to rank in the top 5 of the Imperial Martial Hall. You can't pass through this door in front of me." Hu Qi pointed at the door behind him. "Is that so?" Qin Hao snorted coldly. "Even if I don't use the dragon force, I have 100 ways to make you get lost." As he spoke, Qin Hao spread his legs and lowered his back. He slowly raised his right hand with his palm facing up and his left hand moving to his dantian. His movements seemed to be soft but smooth. At this moment, a profound Taiji radiance appeared behind him. "You overestimate yourself." Hu Qi felt that he was wasting his breath on Qin Hao. If he did not leave, he would throw Qin Hao out. He pressed his big hand on Qin Hao's shoulder. At this moment, Qin Hao also made a move. His left palm stretched out like a snake and wrapped around Hu Qi's thick arm. Then, he grabbed Hu Qi's wrist with his right hand and pressed it down. Crack! Hu Qi's wrist was dislocated and he could not help but grimace in pain. He was immediately furious. His primordial qi surged wildly and he was about to counterattack. However, at this moment, Qin Hao grabbed Hu Qi's arm, and with a tug, he actually threw Hu Qi out in a bizarre manner. Hu Qi felt as if he had stepped into cotton. He could not muster up any strength and was completely helpless. Thanks. With a flash, Qin Hao pushed open the door and entered, disappearing in front of Hu Qi plop. Hu Qi fell flat on his face. He turned around and shouted, "What the hell?" He fell to the ground for no reason. Even Tiger Qi himself was confused. East Continent's Tai Chi sect? Inside the Imperial Martial Hall, Wulong, who saw the scene through a huge crystal, was shocked. Just now, Qin Hao had used the fist technique of the Eastern Continent's Tai Chi sect. He had borrowed the force of the opponent's strength and thrown Tiger Qi out with little effort. "Emperor, are you sure your son-in-law is from Western Liang?" Feng Chu stared at Xiao Yi cautiously. She had been to the East Continent with Wulong and knew about the Tai Chi sect. The Tai Chi sect was originally the strongest empire in the East Continent, an extremely powerful sect in Daqin. However, for some reason, the sect was destroyed by the Sunset Battle God. I'm not too sure. Chapter 1006. Translator. Nyoibo Studio 5 Element Flying Sword. Logically speaking, Qin Hao was from Xiliang. But how could he use the fist technique of the Tai Chi sect? Could it be? In the past 5 years, did Qin Hao go to the East Continent? Forgive me for being blunt. No matter what the reason is, he will not have a good ending once he is involved with the Tai Chi sect. For the sake of the princess, please reconsider. Young Phoenix bowed and said. Xiao Yi pondered for a moment and waved his hand. Don't leak the fact that Qin Hao knows the Tai Chi fist technique. As for him and honor? Xiao Yi pondered for a few seconds before he chuckled and said, He hasn't entered the Imperial Martial Palace yet, has he? Qin Hao didn't pass the test, so he naturally didn't have the face to be Daliao's son-in-law. Don't tell me that Mr. Wulong and young Phoenix aren't confident in their attainments in inscription and artifact forging? Xiao Yi asked. He clapped his hands and a peanut flew into his mouth. It's Qin Hao's luck that sent Hu Qi flying. Wulong clasped his hands behind his back. That's right. He used a trick and didn't fight Tiger Qi head-on. If he did, he wouldn't be Tiger Qi's match. Even so, he won't be able to pass the purple bamboo forest again, young Phoenix said confidently. There were more difficult tests waiting for Qin Hao. Let's wait and see. Xiao Yi tossed another peanut into his mouth and stared at the image on the crystal with great interest. In the picture, Qin Hao entered the purple bamboo forest in the backyard of the Imperial Martial Palace through the back door. This purple bamboo forest was his second test. Regardless of whether Qin Hao had been to the East Continent or not, why did he learn the Tai Chi fist technique? Xiao Yi only needed to prove whether Qin Hao had enough potential to protect Xiao Han. If there is, so what if we become enemies with Daqin of the East Continent? Xiao Yi had fought for 10 years, so he did not mind fighting for another 10 years. Purple bamboo forest. Time seemed to have slowed down. The forest was quiet, and there was a cold, murderous aura hidden within. Qin Hao's deep eyes looked around. Even though he couldn't see, his mind could clearly sense danger approaching. A layer of goosebumps appeared on his body. Xiao Yi, don't you think you've gone overboard? It was not enough for her to take the postgraduate entrance exam once. She had to continue taking the postgraduate entrance exam. The murderous aura hidden in this forest made Qin Hao feel a sense of urgency, proving that the thing that was about to arrive was not ordinary. Moreover, it was not a joke. All right, for the sake of Xiaohan, no matter how difficult it is, we will accompany you to the end. Qin Hao rolled up his sleeves, and his majestic aura spread out. The great void divine sword in his ring was ready to strike. A strange sound came from an unknown location. It was very weak, however. In the next second, a wave of bamboo leaves fell from the sky like a huge net. It was incomparably thick, with countless layers of bamboo leaves stacked on top of each other, heavily pressing down on Qin Hao's head. Danger! Qin Hao did not think too much. His palm flashed, and a sharp emerald sword light slashed across in front of him. Whoosh! The sword light broke through the thick bamboo leaves, and the crescent-shaped sword flew for 100 meters. It easily cut through countless bamboo poles as thick as a leg, and the creaking sound of them falling to the ground could be heard. Good sword! Good sword! In the Imperial Martial Palace, as the sword light suddenly flashed out from the crystal, Wulong and young Phoenix stared at the great void divine sword in Qin Hao's hand and exclaimed in unison. The quality of this sword is at the peak of Emperor weapon. It's only a little bit away from becoming a venerable weapon. Wulong pointed at the image and said. Not only that, judging from the strength of the sword light coming from the crystal, Old Man concluded that this sword still has the possibility of upgrading. More importantly, it does not have any inscriptions on it. What a treasure! Young Phoenix could not hide the thirst in her eyes. As expected of the famous blacksmith master in the northern borderline, Xiao Yi nodded. Based on the strength of the sword light coming from the image, young Phoenix immediately analyzed the quality of the sword in Qin Hao's hand. Xiao Yi did not have such sharp eyesight. He was glad that the two old men followed him. Unfortunately, even if he has an extraordinary divine soldier, your son-in-law will not be able to pass through the purple bamboo forest. Wulong stroked his beard. The layer of falling bamboo leaves was only used to warn Qin Hao that danger was approaching. What came next was his real test. As expected, as Wulong exited, 5 streams of light suddenly appeared on the crystal image. They pierced toward Qin Hao from 5 different directions. They were as fast as lightning and could not be seen with the naked eye. Judging from the shape of the flying lights, they were 5 swords. 5 swords of different attributes, but all of them were sharp. One was a flaming sword surrounded by flames. One was a wooden sword emitting green light. One was a water sword with a trail of water. They were the 5 elements swords of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The inscriptions on these 5 flying swords were all at the royal grade. Wulong and young Phoenix spent 49 days forging them. Whether it was the selection of materials, the quenching, or the smelting, they were all top-notch. Just like Qin Hao's great void sword, they also had the ability to evolve. In order to test Qin Hao, they took 49 days and there was still 1 day left before they were finished. But it did not matter. Even if there was 1 day left, Wulong and young Phoenix firmly believed that Qin Hao would not be able to break through the 5 flying sword. After all, the 5 flying swords had already been upgraded to venerable weapons. They were all at the royal grade. Chapter 1007. Translator. Nioibo Studio. A stroke of fortune. Qin Hao's sword did not possess the strength to break through the five elements sword. With Qin Hao's cultivation, he could not break through the five elements sword's interception. The crouching dragon and phoenix younglings were determined to do so. They would definitely lose all their face and turn back. When they recalled the scene of Qin Hao leaving dejectedly, the two of them were filled with pride. This was the moment for Wulong and Chu Feng to prove themselves to Emperor Shao. In the purple bamboo forest, the five elemental swords transformed into 5 streaks of sharp light. 4 of the swords were in the front and the last one was in the back, forming a pentagram. They were like 5 arrows, aiming at the 5 vital points of Qin Hao. In the face of danger, Qin Hao gripped the great void tightly and pulled it forward with all his might. With a sharp sound of friction, he circled around the 4 flying swords in front of him and flung them to the side. At this moment, the last golden sword that was emitting golden light took the opportunity to rush towards Qin Hao's chest. "I'll block." Qin Hao hurriedly placed great void in front of him. Clang! The sound of metal striking suddenly spread out from the purple bamboo forest, and the sound waves shook the bamboo leaves to the ground. The sharpest golden sword of the whooshing sword happened to hit the back of the great void sword. With one hit, the great void sword was pushed into a huge arc. Suddenly, Qin Hao felt a torrential force invading his body from the front. The unparalleled sword chi caused him to fly out involuntarily. His body broke 7 or 8 bamboo poles in succession before stopping. After stopping for a moment, Qin Hao opened his mouth and vomited a fountain of blood. Royal grade inscription technique, what a powerful sword chi! Qin Hao's expression was extremely shocked. 2 long marks appeared on the soles of his feet. His palms that were holding onto the great void trembled uncontrollably. Blood even flowed out from between his thumb and index finger. It was enough to prove that the crouching dragon and phoenix younglings were not exaggerating. The 5 flying swords were indeed powerful. Sensing the auras of the 5 different attributes, Qin Hao deduced that they were 5 weapons based on the feel of their hands. 5 special weapons with the power of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Shao Yi has a great refining expert under his command. Qin Hao frowned. His face was even uglier than when he met Hu Qi in his previous life. His attainments in refining and inscription were also extraordinary. Although he had not reached the emperor level, he had reached the emperor level. According to the strength analysis transmitted by the great void sword just now, the 5 weapons that blocked his path were all middle-grade venerable weapons. Furthermore, they were engraved with the emperor level 5 elements inscription technique. This was quite troublesome. Although the 5 elements restrained each other, they also promoted each other. Even if no one instilled Yuan Qi to control them, once the 5 elemental weapons appeared at the same time, they could completely complement each other's strength, and the power would be endless. In other words, the only way was to shatter it. Even if it was just one of the swords, it would still be fine. Otherwise, Qin Hao would forever be stuck here, unable to take even half a step forward. Emperor Shao, you really think too highly of me. Even the royal grade craftsman and the great master of inscription are here. Qin Hao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and clenched his teeth. I have only reached the origin king level. Fortunately, my great void sword is extraordinary. Otherwise, if it was someone else, they would have been stabbed to death. Murder. It was simply murder. This was not marrying a wife, it was playing with his life. However, for Xiaohan, Qin Hao was willing to risk his life. Fortunately, these 5 weapons just have the embryonic form of spiritual consciousness and have sprouted spiritual sprouts. They are not as mature as Qi Hong and are full of spirituality. Otherwise, even if I reach the venerable level, I will definitely be finished. Qin Hao heaved a long sigh. The 5 weapons in front of him were indeed very powerful, but there was a flaw. He could take the risk. Immediately, he used the profound water-wind steps, and the enduring samsara absolute art in his body was activated. Qin Hao shot forward with his sword. The 5 flying swords were not to be outdone. Like 5 horses galloping together, they moved side by side, rolling up flames, water, and golden light. They slashed at Xiaohan. In an instant, clanging sounds of collision resounded in the purple bamboo forest. In the midst of the sparks, Qin Hao was surrounded by 5 venerable level swordsmen. The 5 elements flying swords and the great void sword created a total of 6 different sword auras that wreaked havoc, making the purple bamboo forest a mess. 4 words. Extremely childish. In the study of the Imperial Martial Hall, Wulong spat out disdainfully as he watched Qin Hao fall into a battle with the 5 elements swords on the crystal screen. The 5 elements swords have just sprouted spiritual sprouts, but we are not stupid. Qin Clan's brat, watch me tire you out like a dead donkey, young Phoenix muttered. She made a series of hand seals with her palms, and a huge emperor-level consciousness spread out to communicate with the 5 elements inscription technique. At this moment, the 5 elements swords that were fighting with Qin Hao became sharper, stronger, and more violent. The pressure on Qin Hao suddenly increased. As time went by, even though the number of dragons made up for Qin Hao's loss of vitality, his physical fatigue was no longer something that could be filled with tranquil water. This was because the battle with the 5 elements swords was too intense. It was no less than fighting 5 venerable level swordsmen with superb swordsmanship. This is really troublesome. If this goes on, I will be the first to collapse from exhaustion. Qin Hao was trapped in the 5 sword auras and held on for 3.5 hours. This was really rare. Even Wulong and young Phoenix, who were hiding in the dark, had a new level of respect for him. However, how could a body of flesh and blood be exhausted by emotionless weapons? Na Yang was too stupid. He had to find a way to break the 5 elements inscription technique. Qin Hao knew very well that with his cultivation and the current grade of the Great Void Sword, he could not break a mid-tier venerable weapon. Only by breaking the 5 elements inscription technique could he win. Let's start with you. Qin Hao silently activated 10% of his dragon soul power. Golden scales suddenly flashed on the back of his hand, and he forcefully repelled the other 4 flying swords. Red lotus fire surged in his left palm, and he grabbed the flying sword that was emitting a fiery aura. Among the 5 flying swords, the one that caused the least damage to Qin Hao was the flaming sword. This was because Qin Hao had the red lotus fire, which was ranked 3rd on the continent's mysterious flame list. Red Lotus Overlord Flame, the king of all flames. According to Qin Hao's idea, if he fed the flaming sword with the red lotus fire and helped it rise to a higher grade, it might rebel against its master. At that time, fire would subdue wood. He could take the flaming sword and break the wooden sword. The reason why Qin Hao did not inject the red lotus fire into his Great Void Sword was because the current grade of the Great Void Sword could not break the wooden sword. After making up his mind, Qin Hao's hand firmly grasped the flaming sword. The flaming sword struggled madly. However, Qin Hao was not afraid of it at all. You just have to obediently work for me, Qin Hao said in a pleased tone. He was certain that he had the flaming sword under his control. However, suddenly, an unusual feeling came from his palm. Qin Hao's heart thumped. As one of the rare royal-grade weapon craftsmen in the continent 600 years ago, Qin Hao knew that the flaming sword had not been completely tempered. In other words, it was not a finished product now. In a deeper sense, if it was not a finished product, it meant that its master had not dripped blood on it. This was a common problem for all weapon craftsmen. Wonderful! Chapter 1008. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio, the formation emperor of the northern frontier, he wanted to use force to force the flaming sword into his hands. Now this was great. That stupid blacksmith dared to give an unfinished venerable weapon to Qin Hao, who knew how to forge weapons. That meant that the golden sword, wooden sword, water sword, and earth sword that came with the flaming sword were all unfinished. After all, they came out of the furnace at the same time. Qin Hao thanked the heavens and the earth, and thanked the ancestors of the crouching dragon and young phoenix. It would be intolerable if he did not accept it. If that's the case, I'll take it. Qin Hao nodded. It turned out that his father-in-law had given him such a precious treasure at the crucial moment of the emperor's martial competition. Without hesitation, Qin Hao let go of the great void sword and recited the mantra of the inextinguishable samsara technique. Immediately, the great void sword was surrounded by a holy white smoke. A small purple incense burner slowly appeared in the white smoke. The body of the incense burner grew bigger and bigger. Qin Hao's body also surged with the powerful red lotus overlord fire. At this moment, in the study of the Imperial Martial Hall, on the crystal screen, there was a flash of dazzling fire. The sparks exploded too suddenly. Young Phoenix felt pain in front of her eyes and screamed. Her connection with the 5 elements sword was immediately cut off. She covered her face with both hands. "What's going on?" Crouching Dragon said in a panic, and looked at the crystal screen. When he looked again, the crystal screen was covered by an invisible force. It was as if there was a layer blocking it. He could not see clearly at all. It was too hazy inside. This force was the divine power produced by the resonance between the great void cauldron and the inextinguishable samsara technique. But Crouching Dragon did not understand. He turned to look at Xiao Yi, thinking that it was Xiao Yi's doing. "Why are you looking at me?" Xiao Yi stared. He did not even use a bit of his vitality. "You guys insisted on helping me test my son-in-law. Now there's a problem. Long, go lie down in the purple bamboo forest. I have a bad feeling." Clutching her face, young Phoenix squatted on the ground. Her eyes were filled with tears due to the red lotus tyrannical fire. Even her snot was coming out. Just a moment ago, he had lost his connection with the 5 elements sword. When he tried to communicate again, he was blocked by a mysterious and unfathomable force. That energy was too strong. Even Chick Fong, who was a half-step martial emperor, could not sense it with her consciousness. In other words, he had lost the ability to control the elemental sword. The 5 elements sword was too important. They had been forging it for 49 days, even though it was only 1 day short. However, the 5 flying swords were carved with an emperor-level inscription technique. In order to carve the 5 elemental inscriptions, fledgling Phoenix had exhausted half of her origin energy, and her spiritual force had been severely damaged. She could not afford to lose anything. "Don't worry, let me check it out first." Wulong calmly stroked his beard. To deal with Qin Hao, did he have to make a trip personally? He was a peak blacksmith, so it was a little too degrading. As long as he spread out his powerful consciousness, a mere purple bamboo forest would be within his sight. As he spoke, Wulong closed his eyes. His spiritual force spread out wildly from the martial emperor hall, instantly arriving at the purple bamboo forest in the backyard. Not even mosquitoes or ants could escape his eyes. Strangely, he searched again and again, but he could not find any trace of Qin Hao. It was as if Qin Hao had vanished from the face of the earth. "What the hell are you searching for?" "I've already checked. I can't find Qin Hao at all. I've also lost control of the 5 elements inscriptions. I told you to go." My old mother, my eyes." Young Phoenix covered her face and squatted on the ground. Tears kept flowing through her fingers. She could only blame herself for being too proficient in inscriptions and being too sensitive to fire. Earlier, she had been too close, and a strange fire had appeared in the crystal out of nowhere. Even through the screen, young Phoenix felt that she was about to be roasted blind. In fact, it wasn't just Wulong and young Phoenix who were spreading their consciousness. Xiao Yi, who was in the room, and the mysterious middle-aged man painting on the dragon desk were also spreading their consciousness at the same time. Xiao-Yi and the middle-aged man's consciousness were far stronger than young Phoenix's. Two white-gold emperor-level consciousnesses swept out from the study room. Like a hurricane, they quickly arrived at the purple bamboo forest and searched around. The result was that they found nothing. Young Phoenix didn't lie. Qin Hao had indeed disappeared into thin air. This caused Xiao-Yi and the middle-aged painter's expressions to be abnormally shocked. They were all genuine emperor-level powerhouses. Not to mention the purple bamboo forest that was close at hand in the entire northern border. Other than the residences of the other emperors, they could look anywhere they wanted. However, they couldn't find Qin Hao even after searching Daliao. Strange, it's really strange. The middle-aged man finally stopped what he was doing and repeatedly exclaimed in amazement. But Qin Hao didn't disappear for long. In fact, he didn't disappear at all. He was busy forging the unfinished 5 elements sword in the forest. Moreover, Qin Hao's forging efficiency was extremely high. With the support of the Red Lotus fire, the 5 elements sword was only one step away from being finished. It only took him less than half a quarter of an hour to completely forge the 5 elements sword. Of course, he had already dripped his blood on it. At this time, hearing that young Phoenix wanted Wulong to go to the purple bamboo forest, Xiao-Yi waved his hand, then pointed to the image in the crystal and said, "No need." Qin Hao came out. Looking in the direction Xiao-Yi pointed, Wulong and young Phoenix both snorted. Blood oozed from the corners of their mouths, and they fainted on the ground. "Brother Xiao, you found an extraordinary son-in-law." The middle-aged man glanced at Wulong and young Phoenix on the ground. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly as if he was scolding the 2 old men. Then, he smiled at Xiao-Yi. "Does this count as a blessing in disguise for Wulong and young Phoenix?" Xiao-Yi spread his hands and shook his head helplessly. Qin Hao's performance had greatly exceeded Xiao-Yi's expectations. Wulong and young Phoenix were full of confidence in the beginning. In the end, not only did they fail to stop Qin Hao, even the powerful divine soldier that took them 49 days, no, 48 days, had become Qin Hao's toy. Fortunately, you, the number 1 formation emperor of Beijiang, are here. Xiao-Yi looked at the middle-aged man who was painting. His eyes were filled with admiration, and his expression was especially confident. Someone who dared to play with ink and paper on Emperor Zhao's desk must have an extraordinary status. At the very least, he had to be on the same level as Xiao-Yi to be qualified. The middle-aged man was none other than the face-like cream's father that Qin Hao met in the wasteland. He was the president of the Formation Guild of Beijiang and was known as the Formation Emperor. Next, it was Formation Emperor Yan's test for Qin Hao. If Qin Hao could enter the Imperial Martial Hall in front of the Formation Emperor, Xiao-Yi could not think of anyone else in the world who could stop the man that his daughter liked. You can't be so sure. There are talents in every generation and heroes often come from the young. Maybe Qin Hao can really create a miracle. Emperor Yan smiled faintly. There was a sense of mystery in his smile. Chapter 1009. Superb acting skills. In the purple bamboo forest, Qin Hao dispersed the inextinguishable Heart Sutra and put away the great void cauldron. A layer of mysterious power formed a hazy barrier that slowly disappeared from above his head, revealing his figure. Qin Hao's face was filled with satisfaction and joy. He used his mind to feel the 5 small swords floating in front of him. The 5 elemental swords had already shrunk to the size of a foot. Each of them emitted a unique attribute, and like 5 children, they wandered around Qin Hao without restraint. Who would have thought that not only were the 5 mid-tier exalted artifacts engraved with emperor-level inscriptions, but they could also be controlled with one's thoughts. During the refining process, Qin Hao discovered that they still had the potential to level up. They could be called perfect products and were simply too likable. Just now, when Qin Hao used the red lotus tyrannical fire to lure the flaming sword, it did not even last for a few breaths before it succumbed. Next, he used the flaming sword to collect the golden sword to collect the wood to collect the water, and so on. Once all of them were subdued and fused into the divine cauldron, the 5 divine soldier would complete the final step of tempering. Then, he would drip his blood on them to make them recognize him as their master. Right now, Qin Hao was their ancestor. They would stab whoever he told them to. What a rare treasure! Qin Hao could not help but stretch out his hand, feeling the unparalleled sharpness of the 5 elements sword. In the past, he was still a little worried that if he encountered Zhou Wudao, even if he used all his trump cards, he would at most have a 60% chance of defeating the other party. Because Zhou Wudao could casually take out an awesome revered weapon like the Qing Luan demon subduing pestle, he must have a lot of trump cards. Now that he had the 5 elements sword, his 60% chance of victory had increased to 90%. As for the last 10%, it was reserved for Zhou Wudao's surrender. 5 mid-tier venerable artifacts engraved with emperor-level inscriptions. If used properly, they are enough to kill a half-step origin emperor by surprise. Qin Hao raised his nose proudly. He injected his mind into the 5 flying swords, pinched his fingers together, and casually swung them in front of him. Swish! Swish! The 5 flying swords around him suddenly expanded. Powerful flames, golden light, and water burst out, making 5 sharp sounds of breaking through the air. They flew side by side, traversing more than 500 meters in one breath, piercing through thousands of bamboo poles. The bamboo poles were shattered into fine powder after being pierced through. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Yes, thank you, father-in-law Shao, for giving me such a precious treasure. Old you, I'll go and thank you personally. With a wave of his hand, the 5 flying swords quickly turned back, turning into 5 rays of light and entering the spatial ring. Qin Hao put his hands behind his back and strode through the pockmarked purple bamboo forest. Fortunately, Qin Hao was also a refiner and an inscriptionist. He could use the 5 elements sword freely. In Qin Hao's hands, the 5 elements sword could exert 100% of its power. If he didn't thank his father-in-law, he would be letting his wife down. After passing through the purple bamboo forest, Qin Hao saw a corridor leading to the Imperial Martial Arts Palace. The corridor was not long, about 200 steps. Qin Hao walked for a very long time, but he still couldn't reach the end. Through his mind, he could feel that the corridor was very tall and spacious. Because every 5 meters, there would be a stone pillar with a simple aura. If he walked, he would meet one every 8 steps. The distance was very accurate. Why can't I get out? Qin Hao suddenly stopped and his heart sank. At this time, if he couldn't feel that there was something wrong with the corridor, Dendu would have lived in vain. If he guessed correctly, someone had set up a formation here, and it was the strangest formation of all, an illusion formation. Qin Hao couldn't help but admire the person who set up the formation. The other party's formation skills were so strong that even a person's spiritual power could be trapped in it. Logically speaking, the illusion formation instilled images into the mind through the eyes to interfere with the martial artist's mind. However, Qin Hao was blind now. He couldn't see, but he was still trapped. It was enough to prove that the person who set up the formation was very powerful. The level was definitely not inferior to the refiners and inscriptionists who forged the 5 elements sword. Daliao is really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are so many experts. Qin Hao nodded. No wonder Shao Yi used 10 years to recover all the territory from the useless and decadent crown prince. There were so many capable people under his command, and each of them was so powerful. Daliao's foundation was much stronger than Qin Hao had imagined. Thinking of this, Qin Hao couldn't help but feel gratified and happy for Shao Han. But a mere illusion formation can't stop me. Any formation could be broken, and illusion formations were no exception. Once the eye of the formation was poked, the illusion would disappear automatically. However, Qin Hao couldn't see it. Damn it! After cursing, Qin Hao started walking again. This time, he walked very slowly and carefully. He released his powerful Emperor-level spiritual power and carefully searched the corridor for any trace of abnormality. 2 scarlet eyes appeared in Qin Hao's eyes. Even though his vision hadn't fully recovered, he could only forcibly activate the red lotus flaming eyes. With the activation of the red lotus flaming eyes, Qin Hao could vaguely see some images. There was indeed a corridor in front of him. This was very draining for Qin Hao. His eyes were very uncomfortable, and he could only maintain his vision for a short time. He had to find the eye of the illusion formation in the limited time. In the Imperial Martial Palace, Qin Hao was trapped in the corridor again and again. He walked from the beginning to the end and back again. Xiao Yi knew that his son-in-law had fallen into the trap. Emperor Yen, who was standing beside him, didn't look too good. He had clearly made a mark, and the mark was so obvious. He had purposely shown it to Qin Hao so that Qin Hao could easily decipher it. However, in the image, Qin Hao was walking back and forth in the corridor with a confused look on his face. From time to time, he would squat down and knock on the stones under his feet, as if he was on an adventure. Emperor Yen began to doubt his daughter's overestimation of Qin Hao's talent. It shouldn't be like this. According to Xiao Shuang, Qin Hao is a genius in the formation orb. Why does he look like someone who doesn't know anything about formations? Emperor Yen frowned and was very disappointed. However, after thinking about it carefully, a look of realization dawned on his face. He chuckled to himself and said, "Qin Hao must be faking it. He must have discovered my mark long ago and pretended to search for it. It was all a show for Emperor Xiao. If he had broken my illusion formation, Emperor Xiao would have thought that I was lying. Well, very good. His acting skills are superb. Even I was almost fooled by him. He is a talent worthy of a heavy responsibility." Emperor Yen gave Qin Hao a thumbs up in his mind. If Qin Hao knew about it, he would definitely say, "Acting my ass. I can't see anything." Brother Yen is indeed Brother Yen. No one in the northern borderline can compare to you in terms of formations. Qin Hao has been trapped in the formation for 2 hours. Xiao Yi pointed at the image and praised Emperor Yen. He thought that Emperor Yen was too good. One had to know that Qin Hao had only used the time it took to brew a cup of tea to pass through the small door guarded by Hu Qi. Deciphering the youngling dragon and Phoenix's elemental sword took quite a bit of time. On the other hand, Crouching Dragon and Young Phoenix had spent an even longer time forging the 5 elements sword. They had endured a total of 48 days. Their mental and physical strength had been exhausted, and in the end, they had ended up benefiting Qin Hao. Back to Emperor Yen. He casually pointed at the corridor and created a small illusion array. In the end, he casually pointed at Qin Hao, causing him to be unable to pull himself out. 2 hours later, Qin Hao was still dizzy and disoriented. Chapter 1010. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations, the #1 genius of all ages. No, no, no. Brother Xiao, don't underestimate the power of my finger. It might look casual on the surface. In fact, this finger contains the essence of my life's study of formations. I poured hundreds of years of my cultivation into it. This finger is extremely powerful. It's completely reasonable that Qin Hao won't be able to come out in a short time. It's normal that he won't be able to come out in 5 days and 5 nights, 7 days and 7 nights, or even 3 to 5 years. Emperor Yen hurriedly put in a good word for Qin Hao, trying to buy as much time as possible for him to break the formation. Then Brother Yen is even more amazing. Xiao Yi couldn't help but give Emperor Yen a thumbs up. However, there was a trace of worry on his face. He pointed at the image and said, If Qin Hao really can't come out in 3 to 5 years, how will he participate in the imperial martial competition? Although it was a test, Xiao Yi didn't want Qin Hao to be stuck in a dead end for the rest of his life. Wouldn't that be wasting his daughter's youth? Haha, whether Qin Hao can come out or not is up to me. Emperor Yan waved his hand. Xiao Yi was dumbfounded. That was right. Emperor Yan's formation could be easily broken. However, Qin Hao would lose some of his dignity if he did that. Don't lose faith in Qin Hao. It's not difficult for him to break my illusion formation. Let Duan Ziju, the son of the battle monarch, come. If he can break it in 3 months, he'll be considered a top genius. If it's Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan, they can break it in 5 days and 5 nights. They'll be considered 2-realm geniuses. If it's Zhou Wudao, he can break it in 3 days. He'll be considered a 3-realm genius. Actually, the feeling of breaking the formation is similar to breaking through a bottleneck. It's a flash of insight. It depends on whose comprehension and observation skills are better. Emperor Yan explained. Xiao Yi nodded. He didn't know much about formations, but Xiao Yi understood what Emperor Yan was talking about. Xiao Yi shifted his gaze back to the screen. He could only pray that Qin Hao's inspiration would come sooner. In the corridor, Qin Hao searched with his mind 7 times, not letting go of any clues. He also did some in-depth research on some of the more prominent stones, but in the end, he found nothing. Even after activating his red lotus flaming eyes, he was still unable to locate the formation core. As time passed, he had already wasted 4 hours. In the Imperial Martial Arts Hall, Emperor Yan was so anxious that he kept stomping his feet. You brat, you're too engrossed in your acting. Because the red lotus fiery pupil had been open for too long, Qin Hao couldn't bear the pain in his eyes and finally extinguished the soul fire. As a result, breaking the formation was even more difficult. That can't be. Qin Hao's face scrunched up. He had checked everywhere. His powerful rank 15 mentality could even feel the movement of the gravel on the ground. However, the layout of the entire corridor was so tight that he couldn't find any trace of the formation core. The strangest thing was that there was a fist-sized hole at the bottom of one of the pillars in the corridor. Qin Hao didn't check that hole at all. It was too conspicuous. Even Qin Hao, who was blind, could find it. Thinking about how skillful the person who set up the formation around Emperor Xiao was, how could he place the formation core in such a conspicuous place? Unless the person who set up the formation was a big idiot. Forget it. I'd better check the conspicuous hole. It would be a waste of time to continue searching after searching every corner of the corridor. Qin Hao could only try his best and pray that the formation core of the illusory formation was hidden in the hole. In fact, he had already found the pillar with the hole when he first stepped into the corridor. It was the 5th pillar. According to the steps, it was the 40th step. Taking a deep breath, Qin Hao returned to the starting point of the corridor and counted in his mind: 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps, 8 steps, 9 steps, 10 steps, 11 steps. Here it is. Qin Hao squatted down and reached out to feel the pillar. Gradually, his hand reached toward the bottom of the pillar and pressed into the groove of the hole. Well, his calculation was very accurate. It was here. The moment his hand went into the hole, Qin Hao's face changed abruptly and was full of disbelief. The formation core was really here. Then, he felt a strange force coming from his palm. Before Qin Hao could crack the formation core automatically destroyed itself. Whoosh! Like a gust of wind, the illusory formation that shrouded the corridor disappeared. Damn, so easy! Qin Hao cursed and swore. He couldn't help but curse. He tried his best to release all his mentality and opened his red lotus fiery pupils. He checked again, and you put the formation core in a hole that even a blind person could find. The person who set up the formation was really something. But on second thought, maybe this was a real formation master. Grandmasters usually didn't play by the rules. Often, there was something real in what was fake, and there was something fake in what was real. They were confusing and unfathomable. He placed the formation core in such a conspicuous place. Even Qin Hao didn't dare to guess where it was. Perhaps everyone in the world had the same idea as Qin Hao. This is a top almighty. His attainments in formations are sky-high. I really admire him. Qin Hao cupped his fists and bowed to the hole. He misunderstood Emperor Yan's good intentions. If Emperor Yan were here, he would definitely say, "Sky-high my ass." If I didn't make such a big hole, how could you find it? At this moment, in the Imperial Martial Hall, Xiao Yi was thinking about Emperor Yan's words. Those who could break the formation in 3 to 5 years could be called peerless geniuses. Those who could break the formation in 3 months could be called two-realm geniuses. Those who could break the formation in 3 days could be called three-realm geniuses. Suddenly, a violent wave came from the crystal. Xiao Yi quickly looked up. He was shocked to see that Qin Hao had removed the illusion formation in the corridor. He estimated that it had only taken 4 hours. At this moment, Xiao Yi's heart was in turmoil. He couldn't calm down for a long time. "Oh, brother Xiao, you're so lucky to have found an invincible treasure. Qin Hao is a peerless genius." Emperor Yan watched Qin Hao's performance for 4 hours. It was so boring that he was about to fall asleep. Finally, Qin Hao broke the formation. At this moment, Emperor Yan pretended to be extremely excited. He looked as if he was about to kneel down before Qin Hao. He grabbed Xiao Yi's arms tightly and said incoherently, "Do you know what a peerless genius is? He's even more powerful than the geniuses that appear once in 1,000 years, once in 5,000 years, and once in 10,000 years. Qin Hao only used 4 hours to break the strongest illusion formation I've ever created. I can guarantee that in less than 50 years, his attainments in formations will surpass mine. He might even become a peak-level 9th stage array emperor. Brother Xiao, I'm so envious of you. With such a good son-in-law, you can conquer the world." Emperor Yan looked so excited that it didn't seem like he was acting at all. Xiao Yi was stunned by his words. Chapter 10-11. Zhou Wudao is trash. Isn't it a bit too exaggerated to surpass Brother Yan in 50 years? Xiao Yi frowned. Qin Hao was only at the king stage. You're questioning me? Or are you mocking me? When Emperor Yan heard this, he was immediately displeased. He shook off Xiao Yi's arm and pointed at Qin Hao in the crystal image. I, Yan Beibei, have been studying array formations for 500 years. I dare not claim to be a genius, but my potential is definitely top-notch. Compared to Qin Hao, my aptitude is as bad as horse dung on the roadside. You have obtained such a virtuous son-in-law, yet not only are you not grateful to the heavens, you are actually questioning me? No, Brother Yan, that's not what I meant. Xiao Yi hurriedly apologized. Move aside. If you don't want Qin Hao, I want him. It just so happens that my daughter, Rushuang, has also reached the marriageable age. She and Qin Hao are a perfect match. Ha! I will teach him everything I know about formations. This way, I will have a successor. This is perfect. Emperor Yan pretended to run out of the study, as if he was taking Qin Hao away. Seeing this, Xiao Yi hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. Great, you're trying to poach me. He was Emperor Zhao's son-in-law. How could he give him to someone else? However, Emperor Yan showed that he was determined to take Qin Hao away. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to fight with Xiao Yi. The two of them pushed each other and almost fought. At this time, Qin Hao passed through the corridor in the backyard and stood in front of the study. Brother Yan, don't be rash. Qin Hao is here. Go hide. Xiao Yi pointed to the dark room in the study. It would not be good if Qin Hao knew that he and others were plotting against him. Emperor Yen pretended to be flustered. He opened a secret door in the wall and jumped in. Before he left, he didn't forget to grab the unconscious Wulong and young Feng. Xiao Yi's movements were not slow either. He put away the crystal and sat on the dragon throne. He straightened his posture and tried his best to put on a dignified face. He put on a dragon robe. Creak. The door was opened by Qin Hao. Qin Hao's expression was very unsightly. After entering the door, he didn't say a word and stood coldly in front of the dragon table. At the same time, he secretly spread out his consciousness and wandered around the room like a spider web, trying to find the aura of a suspicious person. In the end, he discovered that there were indeed 3 auras in the room other than Xiao Yi's. These 3 auras were especially strong. Instantly, a disdainful sneer appeared on the corners of Qin Hao's mouth. "You've come." After a long silence, Xiao Yi broke the silence. "Didn't you ask me to come?" Qin Hao asked. The corner of Xiao Yi's mouth twitched. He was a little speechless and the atmosphere was a little awkward. It's really not easy to get into the imperial study of the Imperial Martial Palace. If you have any instructions, feel free to speak frankly. Qin Hao was a straightforward person. Whether it was a deal or not, he would give a straightforward answer. Did you take a liking to me? Should his daughter marry him or not? Xiao Yi opened his eyes wide and was a little confused. It was his first time to be a father-in-law, and he had no experience at all. However, in his impression, when a son-in-law of a common family came to visit for the first time, he shouldn't behave like Qin Hao. He was too straightforward. Before you came, I thought for a long time and indeed had a lot to say to you. But when you stepped into the Imperial Martial Palace and stood in front of me, I didn't know what to say. Xiao Yi spread out his hands to show that he was helpless. Originally, if Qin Hao couldn't pass the test as a father-in-law, he would naturally seize the opportunity to teach his son-in-law a good lesson and then give him some guidance. This was called giving a carrot after a stick. He wanted his son-in-law to be in awe of him. In the end, Qin Hao passed through 3 stages in a row, using his actions to forcefully swallow back the diligent teachings that Xiao Yi had prepared. It was really too disrespectful. Since you don't have anything to say, I'm leaving. If he had known this would happen, he would have dragged Xiao Han over. Xiao Han's presence could liven up the atmosphere. Qin Hao only felt awkward now. He couldn't find a common topic with his father-in-law. "Oh, by the way, thank you for the 5 flying swords. They are very sharp." Qin Hao turned around and said as he walked to the door. Oh, it's okay. If you like them, just take them." Xiao Yi waved his hand. The swords weren't his anyway, so he didn't feel bad about it. However, as Qin Hao stepped out of the door, Xiao Yi hurriedly called out, "Wait." Hearing this, Qin Hao quickly stopped, retracted his leg, and stood still. The long-awaited lecture from his father-in-law was finally coming. "Qin Hao, no matter how the Emperor Martial competition ends, after it ends, you must leave Beijiang immediately." Xiao Yi's expression was serious, and his tone was grave. Beijiang was not a peaceful place. Unrest with Beiyan and Beiki could erupt at any time. If Qin Hao stayed, the chaos would only get worse. Qin Hao was very clear about this. He nodded and said, "Okay, but I want to take Xiao Han with me." Qin Hao had sworn that he would not let Xiao Han leave him a second time. Since she was here, he had to take her with him. "I didn't agree to let Han marry you." Xiao Yi raised his eyebrows and smiled as he looked calmly at Qin Hao. "You mean, I must become the champion of the Emperor Martial competition?" Qin Hao thought that Xiao Yi would agree immediately. "Didn't I pass the test just now? Father-in-law should be very satisfied with me." "Fine, if you don't let her go, I will become the champion. Do you think you can take her just because you say so?" "You're looking down on Zhou Wudao and the others on the Emperor Martial ranking, aren't you?" Xiao Yi rapped his fingers on the table. Chapter 10-12. Translator, Nobo Studio Editor, Nobo Studio Su's gift, arrogant. Xiao Yi laughed and scolded. His voice rumbled out. Even if you defeat Zhou Wudao, you still have the first place on the Imperial Martial Roll. The cultivation of the first place is so strong that Qin Hao can't defeat him. Let's wait and see. Qin Hao replied in a fit of pique. His voice gradually faded away. This time, he left the palace through the front door of the Imperial Martial Hall. K.R. had said that the first place on the Imperial Martial Roll was very strong. Now, Xiao Yi had reminded him again. It seemed that this guy was not ordinary. However, as long as it was not Xiao Yi himself, Qin Hao was not afraid of him. Not bad. He is calm and neither servile nor overbearing. He is also very courageous in the face of an emperor-level expert. I didn't misjudge him. After Qin Hao left, Xiao Yi sat on the dragon throne and praised him. It was not the first time he talked to a junior. The warlord's son, Duan Ziju, had come to the Imperial Martial Hall many times in private. Every time, he was reserved like a coward. Emperor Xiao did not know what Duan Ziju was afraid of. There was also Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan. Xiao Yi had seen them before. However, although the Crown Prince of Northern Yen and the Prince of Northern Qi were not as fearful as Duan Ziju, they were too cunning. Their flattery made Xiao Yi feel disgusted. Only Qin Hao was true to himself. Xiao Yi felt that when he talked to Qin Hao, he was like an ordinary person. At the same time, it was as if he and Qin Hao were old acquaintances. There was no grudge between them. Everything seemed so normal. This was the feeling that Xiao Yi was looking forward to. It was the feeling of being a family. Weren't you dissatisfied just now? Now that he is gone, you are praising him again. Yen Beibei pushed open the secret door and walked out. He silently broke out in cold sweat for Qin Hao. He was really afraid that Qin Hao would be like Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan, and also flatter Xiao Yi. I like this guy's temperament, but I didn't say I'd take him as my son-in-law. Xiao Yi raised his head slightly and looked at Emperor Yen. He was still being stubborn. Emperor Yen rolled his eyes at Xiao Yi. His palm flashed and 2 diagrams appeared. They were the diagrams he had just drawn on the dragon table. He handed them to Xiao Yi and said, I have improved the defensive matrix of the border with Northern Yen and Northern Qi. Compared to the one I gave you 2 years ago, it is at least twice as strong. Xiao Yi's heart warmed as he accepted the gift. He wanted to express his gratitude, but when the words reached his mouth, he couldn't bring himself to say them. He could only sigh and say, having a confidant like Brother Yen is better than having 1,000,000 soldiers. Cut the crap. I heard that brat Yi Long Yuan gave you 500 million heavenly crystal ores. Give me 300 million and help me expand the Array Guild's headquarters. Yen Di extended his hand to Xiao Yi. You'd better take the diagram back. Xiao Yi's face tightened as he shoved the diagram back into Emperor Yan's hands. Stingy. It's fine if you don't want to give it to me. Anyway, Yi Long Yuan has a lot of it. I'll ask him for it. Emperor Yen curled his lips and laughed heartily. His figure faded and disappeared from the room. Xiao Yi shook his head and carefully put away the diagram left by Emperor Yen. Although he was younger than Emperor Yen, the two of them felt like old friends at first sight. They confided in each other and became close friends. Daliao had experienced 10 years of war and survived in the gap between Northern Yen and Northern Qi. It was all thanks to Emperor Yan's help in the dark. Xiao Yi had once invited Emperor Yen to move the headquarters of the Array Guild to Daliao, but Emperor Yen refused. According to Emperor Yen, he was more useful to Xiao Yi in the dark than in the open. After returning to Liangmin Tavern, Qin Hao was quite satisfied with this night's visit to the Imperial Palace. As for the setting red sun, he didn't know why it insisted on staying with Xiao Han. However, Qin Hao didn't think it was inappropriate for it to stay with Xiao Han, so he wasn't in a hurry to take it back. Secondly, in order to meet Xiao Yi, Qin Hao went through a small test. At the same time, he obtained 5 mid-tier honorable artifacts with emperor-level inscriptions. This would be of great help to Qin Hao in the imperial martial competition. As soon as he returned to Liangnan Tavern, Qin Hao immediately announced that he would go into seclusion to practice with the 5 elements sword. He wanted to practice a set of sword techniques that matched the 5 elements sword before the top 10 competition started. After all, there was still the mysterious number 1 person in the imperial martial competition above Zhou Wudao. Zhou Wudao was no longer a threat to Qin Hao. His new challenge was the number 1 person on the imperial martial competition list. Qin Hao went into seclusion for 5 days. After the finals of the imperial martial competition, the top 10 competition would start in 7 days. The contestants had to be fully prepared for the top 10 competition. During this time, the children's group competition started first. This made Su Su very anxious. Qin Hao had promised him that when the children's group final started, he would give Su Su a big gift. However, Qin Hao was in seclusion. Su Su had used all his strength to defeat Su Hua. He needed to improve his strength and urgently needed Qin Hao's gift. "Sir still hasn't come out?" In front of Qin Hao's door, Su Su looked at Xiaogua timidly. Then, he secretly glanced at Yi Xuehan. On the day that Sir went into seclusion, there were 2 more terrifying door gods in front of his door. In response, Yi Xuehan waved his hand at him and sent Su Su away. Su Su pursed his lips and struggled for a long time. He wanted to shout at the door, but when he saw Yi Xuehan's body emitting a monstrous light, Su Su immediately swallowed his words. He could only wipe his tears and go downstairs dejectedly. "Looks like I'm destined to be eliminated this time," Su Su sobbed. "Kid!" At this time, Xiaogua shouted. He pointed at Su Su and said, "You're here to ask for a gift from my big brother, right? Go to the tavern's backyard and meet someone. That person will bring the gift to you." Chapter 10-13. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios' father's belongings, not even a word of thanks, how rude. Hearing Su Su's anxious footsteps, Xiaogua grumbled unhappily. He was much smarter than Su Su back then. Looking at the closed door, Xiaogua and Yi Xuehan smiled at the same time. All of this was arranged by Qin Hao. Before he went into seclusion, he had already prepared the special gift for Su Su. He came to the backyard. There was a tall and burly man standing in the yard. The man was about 2 meters tall and had a strong body. He wore a simple set of clothes. The clothes were not dirty, but they were old and faded. There were many patches on them, proving that the man had been through a lot. "Hello, uncle. Did Sir ask you to find me?" Su Su blinked his bright eyes and asked the man excitedly. No, I don't know who Sir is." The man nodded first, then quickly shook his head. Su Su was puzzled. "Then why are you standing here? Who are you looking for?" The man stammered and was a little dazed. He carefully recalled what Qin Hao told him. "Someone told me that the Su family of you country's Suzhou city is here. Little brother, do you know a person called Su Su?" "I am Su Su. Who are you?" Su Su became alert and subconsciously circulated his yuan qi. He did not know this man. "I am Big Head Hu. It's like this. 3 years ago, I met a hero called Su Qingmeng and we traveled together. The Su Qingmeng that the man mentioned was the Su family's patriarch, Su Su's father. The man said that Su Qingmeng had found a treasure and had gathered more than 10 martial artists to form a team to search for it. They found many good things, but the treasure had not been completely excavated. However, there were more and more obstacles, and the excavation became more and more difficult. Many people died and some warriors chose to leave. The man was one of them because it was too dangerous. When the man left, Su Qingmeng gave him something and asked him to bring it to Su Su. As he spoke, the man took out a small red box and handed it to Su Su. This is what leader Su Qingmeng asked me to pass to you. He is your father, right? Father. Su Su's eyes immediately teared up. Looking at the box in the man's hand, a few drops of tears flowed down his cheeks. He nodded. Yes, Su Qingmeng is my father. Thank you. After that, Su Su took the box. I've been entrusted with the task, and I'll do my best to fulfill it. Since I've delivered the goods, I'll take my leave now. The man tried his best to smile. He let out a sigh of relief. He felt that he had completed a historic mission, and was he Meng Yu country. He was. Uncle, wait a minute. I haven't paid you yet. Su Su shouted. The man waved his hand. No need, no need. Regiment Commander Su has already paid. Is my father? How is he? Where is he now? Uncle, can you tell me? Su Su clenched the box in his hand and asked repeatedly. His father had disappeared for 3 years, and Su Su had always been worried about him. Now that he finally got a trace of his father, how could he let it go? The man, the first prince had told him that he only needed to bring the item to Su Su and then repeat the story that Qin Hao had described to Su Su. But His Highness didn't tell the man where Su Qingmeng was. Also, should he answer Su Su's question? The man was very anxious. He kept scratching his head, as if he was in a difficult position. I know even if Uncle doesn't tell me. My father is dead? Su Su saw the man's expression and could guess Su Qingmeng's ending. The man's eyes widened. He was dumbfounded. He was a soldier of the Furious Bear Corps. He was good at fighting. But I really don't know how to lie. Sigh, my condolences. After a long time, the man didn't know what to do. His Highness didn't teach him anything. He might as well follow Su Su's wishes. At this moment, the man stretched out a big hand and pretended to stroke Su Su's head sympathetically. Then, he sighed sadly and disappeared through the back door of the tavern. Once he took a step forward, the man clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with tears, and he couldn't help but raise his head and let out a long howl. I have successfully completed the mission given by His Highness. This mission is so difficult. Between his words, the man's powerful aura surged. He turned into a gust of wind and disappeared from the tavern. In the courtyard, Su Su sneered as if he had lost his soul. Tears kept flowing from the corners of his eyes into his mouth. He said bitterly, "You haven't returned for 3 years. In fact, I have already guessed that you might not be alive. It's okay. You've been gone for so long. I almost forgot about you. So, I'm not sad at all." Su Su wiped the tears from his face. He said he wasn't sad, but his whole body was cold. He had lost his only family in the world. Fortunately, before his father died, he still remembered him and asked someone to send him a relic. If Su Su guessed correctly, the box should contain the treasure Su Qingmeng found in the treasure trove. Chapter 10-14. Juvenile Group Champion Qin Hao knew that the disappearance of the Su family's patriarch had always been a thorn in Su Su's heart. Hence, he specially asked Xiaogua to find a simple and honest violent bear army soldier to work together to weave a white lie to fulfill Su Su's dream. However, Big Head who Qi Xiaogua found was too stupid. He was as stupid as a pig and didn't know how to act according to the situation. He wasted Qin Hao's painstaking efforts and turned the beautiful dream he had made for Su Su into a bolt from the blue, giving him a heavy blow. After Big Head who left, Su Su turned his grief into strength and consumed the Saint Soul Pellet. In reality, the Saint Soul Pellet was refined by Qin Hao. Borrowing the Saint Soul Pellet's strong medicinal effect, Su Su entered the Saint Realm from the Yuan Master Realm. In addition, when Qin Hao was in the Su family, he used the tranquil serene water to strengthen Su Su's martial body. After consuming the Saint Soul Pellet, he directly entered the Mortal Saint's second layer. In the juvenile group, a Mortal Saint's second layer cultivation was definitely one of the top. In the past few days of the competition, Su was unstoppable, defeating many strong opponents. Not to mention, he also had the Flying Snow Sword art, a peak Earth rank martial art imparted to him by Qin Hao. Relying on the Flying Snow Sword art, Su forcefully pushed his way into the top 3 of the children's group, becoming the publicly acknowledged third strongest. In an instant, Su's name became famous and attracted the attention of the outside world. The Su family's grand elder was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He was so excited that he fell to the ground. And today was the day the juvenile group champion was decided. Today was the 6th day of Qin Hao's seclusion. On the 6th day, Qin Hao came out of seclusion. He successfully created a set of profound sword art that complemented the 5 elements sword. He was going to use it tomorrow to blind Zhou Wudao's dog eyes. With nothing to do, Qin Hao, accompanied by Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan, went to watch the juvenile group champion battle to cheer for Su. Sir, the champion's throne is just a step away from you. Do your best and you must win it. The Su family is proud of you. You will definitely be the next patriarch. The first elder stood in the spectator area, raised his fist, and roared with all his might. Blue veins popped out on his face. The other Su family members were the same. Su was the Su family's hope. Su's heart's grand elder Su's heart was Su's heart. Big brother, this scene's Su's heart. Xiaogua smiled as he looked around. The juvenile group arena was bustling with noise and excitement. It was a nostalgic scene. These kids aren't ordinary. Especially the 2 youths standing beside Su. The one on the left is wearing a yellow robe. His cultivation is 1 level higher than Su's. He has reached Mortal Saint Stage 3. It's true that the younger generation excels the older generation. Yi Shuihan couldn't help but praise. Looking at his age, the youth who was 1 level higher than Su was around 15 years old. He had unlimited potential. He's still not Su's match. What worries me is the one on the left of the yellow-robed youth. Even I can't see through that person's chi. Qin Hao's face turned serious. With the Flying Snow Sword art, Su wouldn't lose to the yellow-robed youth. But on the stage, there was a person whose chi was very deep. It was so deep that Qin Hao couldn't see through it. Everyone couldn't help but feel terrified. When Yi Shuihan heard this, he and Xiaogua spread out their Paragon Realm intent. They quickly enveloped the person on the left of the yellow-robed youth. In the end, they couldn't see through that person's chi. Yi Shuihan's face immediately turned serious. Just like Qin Hao, he became cautious. Looking at where that person was standing, he should be the current number 1 in the juvenile group. He was a young contestant called Lu Chou. This Lu Chou was much older than Su. He was around 15 or 16 years old. But he had long snow-white hair that shouldn't belong to a young man. His eyes were abnormally cold. What was strange was that no one knew about his background. In the beginning, his results in the juvenile group were very average. Every time he advanced, he would just barely pass. But in the last 2 days, Lu Chou advanced bravely. He was like a hot knife through butter. He killed the number 1 and number 2 in the juvenile group. That's right, it was a bloody kill. His methods were abnormally vicious. Lu Chou's name swept through the juvenile group like a storm, shocking everyone. As for the champion, Lu Chou was the most popular candidate. Even Su couldn't be compared to him. It seemed that in everyone's eyes, Lu Chou becoming the champion was an indisputable fact. Big brother, this person gives me a strange feeling. For some reason, Xiaogua felt that when he used his intent to check on Lu Chou seemed to have turned his head and smiled at them. Lu Chou didn't turn his head. It was too strange. I also have the same illusion, Yi Shuihan continued. Lu Chou's aura made him very uncomfortable. Yi Shuihan felt like he was a prey waiting to be caught, being targeted by the other party. Calm down and watch, Qin Hao replied indifferently. Qin Hao felt the same way Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan felt. Moreover, Qin Hao was more sensitive than them. He could clearly feel that Lu Chou had used his intent to counterattack. And the one who counterattacked was Qin Hao himself. Lu Chou's intent was filled with hatred and a great deal of sarcasm. This made Qin Hao somewhat confused. He didn't know Lu Chou, so it was impossible for them to have a grudge. Chapter 10-15. Who told who to get out? The competition continued, and the eliminated contestants were eliminated. Only Su Su and the other two were left on the stage. The champion would be Su Su, the yellow-robed youth, and Lu Chou. At this moment, everyone was looking forward to it. The three of you can challenge anyone. Defeat 2 people and become the champion. As for the losers, they will fight another round. The winner will be the runner-up. The host didn't use any fancy words, nor did he use any impassioned speech. He simply stated the rules. Su Su and the others nodded at the same time. The yellow-robed youth took the lead and stood in the middle of the stage. He glanced at Su Su with disdain and smiled. Su Su, you don't deserve to be my opponent. I only need to move my little finger to send you back to your hometown. His meaning was obvious. He didn't put Su Su in his eyes. His target was Lu Chou. The yellow-robed youth also looked at Lu Chou with a provocative gaze and beckoned him with his finger. Su Su immediately retreated to the side. It was better to let the yellow-robed youth and Lu Chou fight first. It was more beneficial for Su Su. Northern Yan Empire's Prince Rong's youngest son, Murong Wenlong, right? Lu Chou stood up and said expressionlessly. Although he was expressionless, his tone was full of disdain. The yellow-robed youth, Murong Wenlong, raised his head proudly. The Yan Emperor was his uncle. He was Prince Rong's favorite youngest son. Among all the sons, he was the most talented one. His name, Murong Wenlong, was known by all the children's group. Hearing Lu Chou's words, Murong Wenlong sneered with a condescending attitude. You're afraid of my identity? You don't dare to fight? Don't worry, my great Yen advocates equality. There's no young prince on the stage, only contestant Murong Wenlong. You can use all your skills and attack me without restraint. Of course, you can also choose to kneel down and admit defeat. Because Murong Wenlong swept his finger in front of his nose, you can't win against me. I only need one hand to defeat you. Ha ha. Murong Wenlong laughed with his head held high. He was extremely arrogant, but he felt that using one hand to defeat Lu Chou was already giving him enough face. Su Su was not even qualified for him to make a move. Lu Chou laughed with ridicule towards this, and he pointed towards the bottom of the arena. It's impossible for me to admit defeat. At the moment I stepped foot onto the arena, I'd already disregarded life and death. So whose son you are, or whose little prince you are, it's no different than fart to me. But if I kill you, it will bring me a lot of trouble. Now I'll give you a chance to live. Follow the direction I'm pointing and run for your life. Murong Wenlong secretly clenched his fists. He could not help but be enraged. Lu Chou was even more arrogant than him. Very well. Since you've made me want to kill you, I'll make you pay a painful price for your foolish actions. Murong Wenlong channeled his yuan qi into his palm. An orange light surrounded him as he channeled his cultivation into his palm. This palm strike was extremely extraordinary, and its level should be extremely high. Then, he took the opportunity to strike at Lu Chou, his palm drawing out an enormous blade of palm qi that was incomparably dazzling. This palm qi forcefully tore open a crack on the arena's floor, and the crack quickly spread to Lu Chou's feet. The palm qi then landed on top of Lu Chou's head, causing countless people to cry out in alarm. A mid-grade Earth-class palm art. Qin Hao scanned with his mind and analyzed the grade. He could not help but be a little surprised. Su had been cultivating the flying snow sword art for a year, but he had yet to reach minor completion. But Murong Wunlong had cultivated a mid-grade earth-class palm art to major completion. His aptitude was indeed extraordinary. Of course, compared to the flying snow sword art, Murong Wunlong's palm art was much weaker. After all, the flying snow sword art was known as an invincible sword art under the heaven class. Along with the exclamations of the crowd, Murong Wunlong's palm chi mercilessly landed on Lu Chao's head. Lu Chao did not even have the chance to dodge. But this seemingly terrifying palm strike had no effect on Lu Chao. It did not even mess up Lu Chao's hair before it was shattered by Lu Chao's protective chi. What? Murong Wunlong was shocked and his expression changed. Get lost. Don't challenge my bottom line while I'm not fierce. Lu Chao still stood there expressionlessly. Murong Wunlong's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. His opponent's cultivation had obviously exceeded his expectations. At this moment, Su was also moved. Even though he was far away, he could still feel the pressure of Murong Wunlong's palm art. Unless he used the flying snow sword art, Su would not be able to take it. But Lu Chao only used his chi to disperse such a terrifying attack. His cultivation was indeed extremely profound. Ah! After Murong Wunlong recovered from his shock, he suddenly let out an inexplicable wild laugh. Following that, his face regained his confidence. Not bad. Finally, a guy who can make me use my full strength without any scruples has appeared. Before, I was afraid that if I used my full strength, I would not be able to control myself and kill my opponent. But now, I'm very satisfied with your performance. Tyrannical mad lion. Open for me. While speaking, Murong Wunlong opened his arms and a white mist appeared behind him. In the white mist, a majestic lion slowly revealed its body. It was 4 meters tall and 8 meters long. It raised its head and let out a roar that shook the sky. The sound waves were extremely terrifying. Murong Wunlong was actually an origin soul martial artist. As expected of the Murong royal family's genius, young Prince Wunlong is so young, but he has already transcended mortality and entered the divine realm. He even has an origin soul. This time, Lu Chao is going to lose. Chapter 10-16. Abstention. Not only was the audience shocked, Murong Wunlong had also surprised Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan. Su clenched his fists as he felt a sense of danger from Murong Wunlong. However, Qin Hao's consciousness was locked onto Lu Chao. He found that even if Murong Wunlong revealed his powerful source spirit, Lu Chao was not affected at all, as if victory was already in his grasp. You still have the face to pretend to be calm. Fine, I'll break you to pieces with a single move and you can go find the King of Hell to calm down. Murong Wunlong did not want to waste any more time, so he directly used his source spirit's ultimate move. At this moment, he fused with his source spirit and his body expanded. He turned into a half-beast, looking exceptionally tall and sturdy. His entire face turned into the shape of a lion. With a head of messy golden hair, he looked exceptionally fierce. He clenched his fists and took a deep breath. His belly swelled into a ball and he suddenly charged at Lu Chao, roaring out a sound wave. This sound wave smashed forward. It was the Lion King's roar divine art. This sound wave was incomparably grand and swept out like a whirlwind. The audience close to the stage quickly covered their ears with their hands and screamed as if their lives depended on it. Blood flowed out of their ears. Su on the stage could not control his legs as they flew far away. The actions of a child can't even withstand a single blow. Lu Chao's expression did not change as he stretched out his hand. When the sound wave surged forward, his hand weakly patted in front of him. Puff! The sound of glass breaking rang out. With this light pat, Murong Zijuan's strongest attack with his source spirit had disappeared without a trace. The entire scene returned to normal, as if the terrifying scene from before had never appeared. Putong. Murong Wenlong could no longer remain calm as he fell to the ground in fright. His face was filled with fear. How is this possible? At the same time, Su Su was also shocked. This is the last sentence. Scram, I've already lost my patience with you. Lucho impatiently waved his hand at Murong Wenlong, as if he was sending away a clown. You bastard! Don't worry, even if my source spirit can't hurt you, I still have a king weapon in my hand. This sharp divine whip was given to me by my father and is the highest grade weapon I can use right now. Murong Wenlong jumped up crazily, hurriedly pulling out a snake-patterned whip from his spatial ring, vainly attempting to struggle. Unfortunately, he had no chance to struggle. Lu Chao's face was filled with disgust as he threw out a heavy palm. This palm passed through the center of Murong Wenlong's whip, breaking it into two pieces. Then, it ruthlessly slammed into Murong Wenlong's face, knocking him off the stage. Puff! Murong Wenlong spat out a mouthful of blood and stood up. He was about to charge forward, but before he could stand firm, he felt his vision darken. He had been knocked unconscious by the residual force of the palm. Whoosh! Hundreds of thousands of people stood up at the same time. Move. Strong. Very strong. Unfathomably strong. Describing Lu Chao's cultivation like this was not an exaggeration at all. What a clown, you really think you're a dish. Looking at the unconscious Murong Wenlong being carried away, Lu Chao's face was filled with disdain. Then, he coldly stared in Su Su's direction. Next, it's your turn. Gulp. Facing Lu Chao's emotionless cold eyes, Su Su subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. To be honest, from their exchange just now, Su Su had no confidence in winning against Lu Chao. After all, with Murong Wenlong's cultivation, it would be very difficult for Su Su to win. Even so, Murong Wenlong was being suppressed by Lu Chao. It was simply a crushing defeat. The battle hasn't even started yet. How can I be afraid? Creak. Su Su fiercely clenched his fists, as if this would give him strength and make him no longer feel fear. But his legs were still trembling uncontrollably. Su Su really didn't want to give up. He really didn't want to. Especially when he stepped into the saint stage. His father had sacrificed his life in exchange for an immortal pill. Suer forfeit. At this moment, a magnetic voice came from the outside of the arena. The voice was very soft, but it flowed through Su Su's heart like a stream, causing his fearful body and mind to immediately calm down. Sir! Su Su was overjoyed. He looked in the direction of the voice and indeed found Qin Hao in the crowd. Beside Qin Hao stood Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan. Sir, are you here to cheer for me? Then I can't admit defeat so easily. In his surprise, Su Su's entire person became strangely calm. The first time he saw Qin Hao, it was as if a force flowed into Su Su's body, causing him to no longer be nervous or afraid of Lu Chao's strength. Qin Hao was just that amazing. Suer forfeit. Qin Hao transmitted his voice again. He was not here to cheer for Su Su. To be precise, he originally wanted to cheer for him, but with Lu Chao's unexpected appearance and his tyrannical side, Qin Hao made a prompt decision to have Su Su forfeit. Why? Su Su shouted loudly, his face full of disbelief. His performance immediately attracted the attention of the audience. They all looked in the direction of Su Su's shout and saw Qin Hao and the others standing in the crowd. The arena was once again in an uproar. Oh my God, those three seem to be experts in the adult group. Yes, I know them. The white-haired young man is Qin Hao, ranked 14th on the Imperial Martial ranking list. The handsome man in blue is Yi Shuihan, who was originally the top person in the Northern Division. And that young man looks harmless, but he's actually a violent monster. His name is Xiaogua. They're all in the adult group. They're the top experts in the top 10. We're so lucky today. The appearance of Qin Hao and the others immediately became the focus of the children's competition. Many infatuated girls surrounded Yi Xuehan and asked for his autograph. When everyone's gazes shifted, Lu Chou naturally didn't stay idle. He also openly flashed a smile at Qin Hao. This smile was extremely cold, and in a trance, it seemed as if the temperature of the children's group arena had dropped. Sir, listen to me. Forfeit immediately. You're far from being his match. Qin Hao surged some primordial qi, forming a whirlwind around him, blocking the admirers who were approaching him. He warned Su Su again. It was a very strict warning. Chapter 10-17. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. Saving someone on the stage. Lu Chou had broken Murong Wenlong's king-level weapon with a wave of his hand. Even though it was a low-grade king-level weapon, Lu Chou's cultivation had surpassed the sage level and was at least king level. And this was just a conservative estimate. Maybe Lu Chou's cultivation was higher than expected, and it did not match his age. No matter how talented Lu Chou was, it was impossible for him to become a Yuan king at the age of 15 or 16. There must be something going on. Qin Hao's intuition told him that Lu Chou's age might be fake, and even his identity might be fake. But Qin Hao could not prove it, and he had no reason to interfere in the children's competition. There was another point. Lu Chou spared Murong Wenlong's life not because he was kind, and it was also not because he was afraid of Murong Wenlong's background. Qin Hao felt that Lu Chou had purposely created a terrifying atmosphere to pressure Su Su, who was about to enter the arena, and make Su Su fearful. In fact, Lu Chou had done it. What was his purpose in doing this? Qin Hao could not figure it out. But Qin Hao was sure of one thing. Sur was a springboard, and it was Lu Chou's signal to provoke him. As for who he was provoking, it was clear at a glance. Of course, it was Qin Hao. From Lu Chou's thoughts, Qin Hao could feel a bone-chilling hatred. The hatred was so strong that Lu Chou could not wait to tear Qin Hao into pieces. Murong Wenlong is a tool for him to display his strength. His final goal is me. And Su is just a springboard for Lu Chou. To Lu Chou, Su's life is like grass. Qin Hao muttered. His pupils constricted, and he secretly clenched his fists. His intuition had never been wrong. Su was now in the arena, and it was very dangerous. He had to forfeit immediately. I don't. Su Su openly disobeyed Qin Hao and shouted, "My current cultivation was exchanged with my father's life. The champion is right in front of me. If I forfeit now, I am not worthy of being called a son." His shout was very loud. This was the first time he had rejected Qin Hao. Just like when Qin Hao had first rejected Su Su. At this moment, Qin Hao's heart was filled with shock. What's going on? Qin Hao turned his head and looked at Xiaogua with a hint of anger. He had asked Xiaogua to find a warrior from the Furious Bear army to pass a message to Su Su. He told him some news about Su Qingmeng to ease Su Su's longing for his father. For this reason, he did not hesitate to lie that the Holy Soul Elixir he refined was a gift from Su Qingqing to Su Su. At this moment, listening to Su Su's words, Qin Hao's painstaking efforts were ruined by Xiaogua. I don't know either, Xiaogua said with a long face. He indeed repeated his elder brother's instructions 3 times to Big Head, who without missing a single detail. Big Head, who was a very honest person. Xiaogua felt that his acting would be very realistic. As for the final result, Xiaogua did not pursue the matter. I'll deal with you later. Qin Hao was very angry. The most important thing was to persuade Su Su to step down. Qin Hao ignored the Imperial Guards around the fighting ring and walked straight up. When the Imperial Guards saw Qin Hao walking over, they looked at each other and no one dared to stop him. At this moment, Qin Hao's tone was extremely serious. As he walked with a straight face, He pointed at Su Su and shouted, "Su Su, you must forfeit. Immediately, I don't." Flying snow swordsmanship. Su Su watched helplessly as Qin Hao forced him to give up. How could he stay still? He directly pulled out his sword. He could not miss the opportunity to win the championship. As soon as Su Su attacked, he used the exquisite moves of the flying snow swordsmanship. First, he used the traceless snow steps as a supplement and quickly moved in front of Lu Chou. Then, he waved his sword and swept out countless ice crystals. This move was the most powerful move of the flying snow swordsmanship. Flying snow. Suddenly, the falling snow filled the sky and turned into a raging snowstorm. Together with the sharp sword aura, it swept towards Lu Chou. Seeing this, Lu Chou sneered. He suddenly raised his palm and fiercely threw it forward. Whoosh! A drill-like palm force was swept out by Lu Chou. It was like a giant python that came out of its hole. It twisted its ferocious body and completely penetrated the snowstorm. The sword aura in the snowstorm collapsed. At this moment, it was as if the snowstorm was wailing. Lu Chou's attack seemed to be played down, but its power was devastating to the extreme. This scene shocked the entire arena. As expected, Lu Chou, who had exhausted all his skills, once again crushed Su Su, who was ranked third in the juvenile group. However, Su Su was in a more dangerous situation than Murong Wanlong. When the palm force penetrated the snowstorm, it mercilessly blasted towards Su Su. Su Su was deeply shocked. His mind was blank. He did not expect Lu Chou's cultivation to be so powerful. In his opinion, although Lu Chou defeated Murong Wanlong, the flying snow swordsmanship was not weak. However, the flying snow swordsmanship was not weak either because it was taught by the teacher. However, when the flying snow swordsmanship was placed in front of Lu Chou, it was as weak as a piece of paper. Danger! Qin Hao roared and immediately rushed towards the stage. He did not care about breaking the rules of the competition. The Su family members were all pale with fright. Su Hua fell to the ground without a care for his image. Lu Chou was too powerful. He was like a god that appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, they did not dare to hope that Su Su would win the championship. They only hoped that Qin Hao would save him. However, due to the difference in distance, Qin Hao was one step behind. Moreover, Qin Hao had not reached the revered level and could not teleport. Chapter 10:18. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Lu Chou's cultivation base boom. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded, and the ground shook. Under this attack, the battle stage actually tilted 2 meters towards Su Su's position. It was obvious how terrifying Lu Chou's Yuan Qi was. Fortunately, Su Su wasn't injured. In the nick of time, the host of the arena stepped in to stop the attack. It was a middle-aged Yuan Venerate. However, the moment the middle-aged Yuan Venerate blocked the attack, he was forced to take 3 steps back. He couldn't help but look shocked. "You're lucky to be able to keep your life." Lu Chou looked at the scared Su Su and said with dissatisfaction. "How dare you?" The middle-aged Yuan Venerate pointed at Lu Chou. "Su Su has already forfeited. If you continue to attack recklessly, you will be disqualified." "But he didn't say that he would forfeit," Lu Chou said. Qin Hao landed on the arena. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw that Su Su was safe and sound. He cupped his fists at the middle-aged Yuan Venerate and said, "Thank you. I wouldn't dare." The middle-aged Yuan Venerate hurriedly returned the gesture awkwardly. Ever since Qin Hao had revealed his identity, everyone in the imperial capital had known that he was Princess Jinyue's lover. If Qin Hao won the imperial martial competition's adult division, he would definitely become Daliao's son-in-law. How could the middle-aged Yuan Venerate accept Qin Hao's gesture? "Sir, I'm really sorry." Su Su was scared out of his wits. His face had turned green as he lowered his head. The hand holding the sword was still trembling. When he had brushed shoulders with death, that surge of power had allowed him to sense that Lu Chao's cultivation base was heaven-defying. He also knew that he wasn't on the same level as Lu Chou. It was only now that he realized that Qin Hao had been right to ask him to forfeit. Qin Hao patted Su Su's head helplessly and sighed. Children made mistakes sometimes. Then, Qin Hao looked at Lu Chou and used his consciousness to envelop the other party. Young Master Qin, this person is extremely dangerous. I suspect that he, the middle-aged Yuan Venerate, hesitated. He also sensed that Lu Chou wasn't a simple person. Thus, he wanted to ask Qin Hao if he wanted to disqualify Lu Chou and hand him over to the military for an investigation. The middle-aged Yuan Venerate's rank was too low, so he couldn't make decisions on his own. If Qin Hao stepped in, the higher-ups would definitely comply. Disqualify me, and Su Su will naturally become the champion of the children's category, right? How shameless! Lu Chou sneered. Impudent! You know better than anyone what kind of thing you are. I'm a dignified rank 3 Yuan Venerate powerhouse, yet I was almost forced back by your palm. You must have come from an unscrupulous background. The middle-aged Yuan Venerate was furious. The weak always find excuses for themselves. Lu Chou calmly put his hands behind his back. It doesn't matter. Let him be the champion. Sir, let's go. Qin Hao pulled Su Su off the stage. The children's group was the entertainment arena of the Imperial Martial Arts ceremony. Small fights were not important and would not affect the adult group. Furthermore, if the Daliao military department dealt with Lu Chou, Qin Hao would have no way of knowing his true intentions. I don't care about trash like the champion of the children's group. My goal is to enter the adult group and marry Daliao's Princess Jingyue. Qin Hao, I heard that you are very strong in the adult group. Do you dare to fight me here? Lu Chou finally couldn't help but issue a challenge as he shouted at Qin Hao's back. Qin Hao suddenly stopped in his tracks, but he didn't turn around. If you have the ability to stand on the adult group stage, you might as well give it a try. As for now, I don't have the time to deal with you. Coward! Spit! Lu Chou spat at Qin Hao. You are too arrogant. Su Su turned around and glared at Lu Chou when he heard the spit. You don't have the right to speak. Get lost. Lu Chou's eyes flashed fiercely as he waved his hand and blasted a wave of unparalleled origin energy at Su Su. Qin Hao reacted quickly as well. He hurriedly circled his arms behind him to protect Su Su. A layer of scarlet qi quickly rose from the soles of his feet and collided head-on with Lu Chou's attack. Bang! The deafening sound was deafening. The shock waves spread out and sent the middle-aged Yuan Venerate flying a great distance away. Qin Hao's body trembled violently as his protective aura shattered. A trace of dark red flowed out of the corner of his mouth. Lu Chou wasn't in a good state either. He shook violently a few times, causing his shoes to burst open. His long hair, which could be considered elegant, became messy and a trace of blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. The two of them were evenly matched when they exchanged moves. Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan, who were below the stage, exclaimed in surprise. Lu Chou was actually so strong that he could stand shoulder to shoulder with Qin Hao. It was no wonder that no one in the children's group could match him. However, Su Su couldn't. Even though he had Qin Hao's protection, the aftermath of the collision still invaded his body and paralyzed him immediately. His little face was extremely pale. You really have some skills. Lu Chou wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was shocked by Qin Hao's display of cultivation. Su-er. Qin Hao squatted down and infused a wisp of serene tranquil water into Su Su's body. Su Su's breathing was very chaotic. However, his life wasn't in danger. He had only suffered internal injuries from the aftermath of the collision between the two of them. The injuries weren't serious, so he would recover after a period of careful recuperation. However, Lu Chao's actions had undoubtedly angered Qin Hao. Qin Hao picked up Su Su's unconscious body and slowly turned around. 2 scarlet spots of light appeared in his eyes as he stared at Lu Chou. I don't care who you are or what kind of deep hatred we have. You have injured Su Su, so I will repay this debt 100-fold. Chapter 10-19. Translator. Nioibo Studio. Shao Han's bloodline power. The purple flames burned fiercely in the arena, shocking the hundreds of thousands of people outside the arena. The audience's hearts could no longer be described as shocked. Lu Chou could be said to be the descent of a monster. However, in the end, Qin Hao and Lu Chou didn't fight. A dignified voice rumbled in the air like thunder. It was Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi allowed Lu Chou to be promoted to the adult division. The day after tomorrow, he would have a public duel with Qin Hao. Lu Chou was surprised by the result. He did not expect Emperor Xiao to promote him to the adult group so easily. Logically speaking, they should first investigate Lu Chao's background. Lu Chao's surprise only lasted for a moment. In the next second, he returned to normal. No matter what, the result was exactly what he had hoped for. In the competition for the top 10 the day after tomorrow, I will make you regret being born into this world. Lu Chou raised his head and swept a glance at Qin Hao. I'm afraid you don't have the ability, Qin Hao said coldly. Let's wait and see. Lu Chou coldly snorted. He flicked his sleeves and left the stage, disappearing into the crowd. Big brother, do you want me to go? Xiaogua leaped onto the stage and glanced in the direction where Lu Chou had disappeared. His intention was to secretly capture this person. There's no need, because he'll turn into a corpse the day after tomorrow. Qin Hao carried Su Su and walked towards Liangmin Tavern. It was more important to go back and stabilize Su Er's internal injury. As for Lu Chao's true identity, what kind of deep grudge did he have with her? He would know the day after tomorrow. After one night. Imperial Martial Arts Hall. In the study, Xiao Yi sat majestically on the dragon throne. He looked at Gongsun Chongqing and asked, "What's the result of the investigation?" In fact, after he allowed Lu Chou to be promoted to the adult group yesterday, he immediately sent Gongsun Chongqing to do a secret investigation. A 16-year-old Yuan Venerate had been born in the children's group. How could they not investigate? Reporting to the imperial capital, here are the results of the investigation. Gongsun Chongqing solemnly placed a stack of documents on Xiao Yi's desk. As Xiao Yi's confidant and Daliao's first chief of internal affairs, Gongsun Chongqing was in charge of the Luo Net, the top intelligence organization in the northern borderline. The efficiency of the net was extremely high. Although Lu Chou had changed his appearance several times, the people who helped him hide his identity were basically all killed, so it was quite difficult to track them down. However, it only took a day and a night, and he was still thoroughly investigated. Xiao Yi stretched out his hand. His calloused fingers lightly plucked 2 pages from the document. The details of how Lu Chou had changed his appearance and the ins and outs of everything were written in great detail. Xiao Yi couldn't help but sneer. So it's him. The results of the investigation were clearly beyond Xiao Yi's expectations. But thinking of what Qin Hao had done in Lingtai City, it was reasonable for Lu Chou to seek revenge. My imperial capital, this person lied about his age and killed and heavily injured dozens of the children's group's geniuses. This is a heinous crime. This old servant doesn't understand why you didn't kill him. Instead, you gave him a fair fight with Qin Hao? Isn't this one more obstacle for young Master Qin to win the championship? Gongsun Chongqing frowned with worry. The document clearly stated that Lu Chao's cultivation was extraordinary, and his combat strength was no less than the top 10 experts on the imperial martial roll. Although he wasn't as strong as Zhou Wudao, he was comparable to Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan. Without a doubt, he was a strong opponent for Qin Hao. As Xiao Yi's old servant, Gongsun Changxing doted on Xiao Han very much. Naturally, he hoped that Qin Hao and Xiao Han could walk together. Isn't it good to have one more obstacle? If he wins, it will fully prove Qin Hao's ability. If he loses, I will kill Lu Chou on the spot. Qin Hao won't be disqualified from the competition. After all, Lu Chou violated the rules. He deserves to die. Xiao Yi said incomparably coldly. Seeing Gongsun Changxing sigh, Xiao Yi said, Changxing, you know Han Er's background best. I'm not deliberately making things difficult for Qin Hao, but reality is cruel. I have no choice but to do this. If he doesn't have enough ability to protect Han Er, the tragedy between me and the Crown Princess 10 years ago will happen to the two of them. Is this what you want to see? Moreover, he actually let little Han secretly take away one of the treasures I prepared for the competition, the heart-connecting treasured mirror. That little bastard! Xiao Yi's palm slammed heavily on the table as he couldn't help but curse. Qin Hao had taken away the prize before the championship match even started. The heart-connecting mirror wasn't particularly precious to Xiao Yi. After reaching the emperor level, no other treasure could tempt Xiao Yi unless it was a divine artifact. This old servant understands your painstaking efforts, but I pity our little princess. Gongsun Changxing couldn't help but cry when he mentioned the crown princess's past. The cruelest thing in the world was to have a lover but not be able to marry. Xiao Yi only had one request. The son-in-law that Xiao Han chose for him had to be the strongest person in the divine wilderness continent. Even if he wasn't currently, his potential had to be. If Qin Hao's skills were inferior, Xiao Yi wouldn't let Xiao Han do as she pleased even if he had to break them up. 10 years ago, Xiao Yi lost his wife because of his lack of ability. 10 years later, he was covered in wounds and his lifespan was burning 5 times faster than an ordinary emperor. He couldn't let his misfortune happen to his daughter again. Xiao Yi hoped that before he died, he could find the strongest protector for Xiao Han. Only the strongest man in the continent had the qualifications to fight against the god race. You may leave. I want to be alone. Xiao Yi's body suddenly trembled. A layer of blood-red spider silk quickly crawled over his body and face. It was as if his skin was splitting open. It was extremely frightening. He hurriedly took out a bottle of pills from his interspatial ring and poured all the pills into his palm. He swallowed them in one gulp. Only then did the expanding blood-red spider web gradually disappear. At this moment, Xiao Yi's trembling body finally returned to normal. My emperor, you must take care of yourself. The crown princess is still waiting for you. Gongsun Changxing couldn't bear to continue watching. He turned and walked out of the study. The crown princess didn't die back then. As the ruler of the god race, how could she die in the hands of a few mortals? The real reason why the crown princess disappeared was that she was forcefully taken away by the god race in the heaven realm. The scene of the crown princess being forcefully taken away after giving birth to the little princess was once Xiao Yi's nightmare. However, for the safety of Xiao Yi and Xiao Han, she had no choice but to leave. Gongsun Changxing had always known that Xiao Yi wanted to break through the emperor's shackles and cultivate a god body so that he could go to the heaven realm to find the crown princess. For this, he didn't hesitate to fall into the demonic path and increase the speed of burning his lifespan in exchange for a rapid increase in cultivation. However, based on the amount of pills Xiao Yi had consumed to suppress the demonic nature, it was obvious that he didn't have the time to break through to the god rank. Han Er, don't blame father for being cold-blooded. I'm afraid that if I die, no one in this world will have the ability to protect you. Qin Hao, don't disappoint Han Er, and don't disappoint me. After Gongsun Changxing left, Xiao Yi murmured. Then, he leaned against the dragon throne and stared blankly at the ceiling. Chapter 10:20. The appearance of the top 10 the next day. The competition for the top 10 began under the anticipation of hundreds of millions of people. The arena was still under the royal tower. The arena was once again widened, lengthened, and strengthened. The number of imperial guards guarding the arena was increased by 5 times. Even the 4 Emperor Realm experts from the imperial palace, Prophet Mingqing, were dispatched. The scale was so large that it showed the importance of this competition. After all, this was the competition to determine the top 10 of the Imperial Martial Grand Ceremony. It was also the first step for the contestants to become the champion. As the name suggested, the top 10 competition consisted of Duan Ziju, Song Ziyang, and Tai Guili. The top 11 to 20 contestants would challenge the top 10 hidden monstrous geniuses on the Imperial Martial ranking. Among the challengers, Qin Hao and Xiaogua were among them. Once they defeated their opponents, Qin Hao and Duan Ziju's group would replace Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan's group and participate in the next battle for the top 3. If they failed, they would be mercilessly eliminated and lose the chance to marry Xiao Han. Accompanied by a sea of people, the challengers were the first to step onto the arena. The leader was Duan Ziju. Next were Song Ziyang, Qin Hao, Tai Guili, Yi Shuihan, Xiaogua. They went onto the arena one by one according to their individual rankings. Qin Yun, Xiao Jiu, Xing Er, and Chen Wanqin walked at the end. The 4 of them were the last to pass the finals. As for Yi Wuhan, he was more miserable. He defeated an opponent in the finals, but in the second round, he met a tough opponent. The opponent's defense was very high and he was a cultivator with an earth-attributed source spirit, which perfectly countered Yi Wuhan's quick sword. In the final move, both of them were heavily injured and it ended in a draw. Although it was a draw, they lost the qualification to enter the finals. Yi Wuhan was currently sitting behind Yao Lao with a wrinkled face. He was watching the competition as a disciple of Qi Yang, but his face was filled with unhappiness. He was the first to be eliminated. It was too embarrassing. Yi Wuhan wanted to cry. Let's invite the top 10 of the Imperial Martial ranking to come onto the arena. Gongsun Changxing stood on the royal tower and shouted in a solemn voice. Instantly, the spectators around the battle arena all stood up at the same time in an unusually orderly manner. To the audience, the 10 contestants whose names were hidden on the Imperial Martial ranking were all extremely mysterious. Even though they knew that the Yan dynasty's crown prince, Murong Zijuan, and the Northern Qi dynasty's crown prince, Qi Yuan, the audience did not know about the other 7 contestants. This was especially true for the number 1 person. The identity of the number 1 expert was extremely attractive. At this moment, Duan Ziju and the others who stood side by side, including Qin Hao, didn't blink as they stared fixedly at the entrance of the stone steps on the east side of the arena. Inside the tunnel, the top 10 geniuses of the martial monarch realm would appear one after another. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, a young man in a light purple robe was the first to enter from the east. He slowly walked onto the stage with a smile on his face. He raised his hand to greet everyone and appeared very friendly. Ranked 10th on the Imperial Martial ranking. He's a genius from the southern domain, Zheng Qinqi. Gongsun Changxing gave a simple introduction to the friendly young man. This person actually came from the southern region. His ranking is higher than Prince Duan's. It seems that his cultivation is not simple. You don't need to tell me that. Even a dog can tell. The audience discussed Zheng Qinqi animatedly. Greetings, brothers. I'm Zheng Qinqi. Later on, no matter who you encounter, please go all out. Because I won't hold back. Zheng Qinqi smiled at Qin Hao and the others on the west side. He was very polite. Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan curled their lip. Even a fool would know who held back. At this moment, a young man in a tight black robe appeared at the entrance of the east side. He was handsome and free, and his black hair swayed with the wind. He was very charming. However, compared to Zheng Qinqi, who was exuding a friendly aura, The young man in black had a shrewd smile on his face, which made him look very shrewd. Ranked 9th on the Imperial Martial ranking, Xianyuan Wuji from the proud God Nation in the Southern Domain. Gongsun Chongxing shouted. Another person from the Southern Domain? 2 geniuses from the Southern Domain have entered the top 10 of the Imperial Martial ranking without participating in the competition. Their cultivation is too amazing. This time, an uproar could not help but arise in the spectator stands. Is he Xianyuan Wuji mentioned by Gongshu Jian, the master of the same year and month? Following this, Qin Hao hurriedly enveloped it with his consciousness. After Xianyuan Wuji stepped onto the stage, he didn't greet Xiaogua and the other challengers politely like Zheng Qinqi. Instead, he didn't speak at all. In other words, he disdained to speak. Instead, he just sneered as if Duan Ziju and Song Ziang were ants in his eyes. However, when Qin Hao sent his spiritual energy over, Xianyuan Wuji suddenly burst into laughter, which startled Zheng Qinqi. Closely after that, Xianyuan Wuji made a gesture of cutting his throat towards Qin Hao. F***ck. Xiaogua glared at Xianyuan Wuji as he was going to tear Xianyuan Wuji's face. Don't worry. Now that it's the competition for the top 10, let's challenge him later. Yi Shuihan stopped Xiaogua. Only then did Qi Xiaogua temporarily swallow the anger in her heart. At this moment 2 more young men walked out of the eastern passage. As soon as these 2 people appeared, the audience and the Imperial Pavilion could not help but burst into cheers. The 2 young men were no strangers to the martial artists of the northern border. They were Song Zijie, the youngest son of the head of the Song family, one of the 5 heroes of the northern border, and Jiang Zizai, the eldest son of the head of the Medicine Emperor Pavilion. Jiang Zizai was Jiang Fengyu's elder brother. As for Jiang Fengyu, he had just died in Qin Hao's hands. Chapter 1021. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations 6 against 6-inch ranked 8th on the Imperial Martial Roll, Northern Qi's Holy Land of Alchemists, Medicine Emperor Pavilion's eldest disciple, Jiang Zizai. Ranked 7th on the Imperial Martial Roll, Northern Yan's wealthy Song family, Song Zijie. I believe I don't need to introduce these 2, right? Gongsun Chongxing's voice spread from the Imperial Tower. The audience burst into laughter. Pavilion Master Jiang's son and the Song family's most favored successor naturally didn't need to be introduced. Everyone was very familiar with them. Zizai, my son, the guy in white with dim eyes on the stage is Qin Hao, the madman who killed your brother. Chop him into 1,000 pieces for your father, and viciously trample him to death in front of everyone's eyes. Let his cries spread throughout the world. Pavilion Master Jiang stood in the Imperial Tower and roared with righteous indignation as Jiang Zizai stepped onto the stage. Father, don't worry. I'll make Qin Hao regret living in this world. Of course, before I use the fatal move, I'll tear him into pieces first. Jiang Zizai replied with his hands behind his back. His attitude was extremely arrogant, and he didn't take Qin Hao seriously at all. Pavilion Master Jiang stroked his beard arrogantly and sat down with satisfaction. Then, he deliberately turned his head to look at Xiao Yi, who was sitting at the top of the Imperial Tower. His eyes were full of unbridled laughter. Xiao Yi directly ignored him, treating Pavilion Master Jiang as a fart. Zijie, don't disappoint me and all the elders of the family. Song family leader roared in a very strict tone. Since Song Ziang appeared in the Imperial Martial Tournament, he knew that he was targeting Song Zijie. Song Ziang wanted to compete with Song Zijie for the right to inherit the family. There would be a life-and-death battle between the 2 of them. Song Zijie clenched his right fist and raised it above his head confidently, indicating that he would win this battle. At this moment, another figure slowly walked over from the eastern corridor. This person was wearing the Northern Qi royal family's uniform. He walked lazily and looked very unhappy. It was the Northern Qi crown prince, Qi Yuan, who was as famous as Murong Zijuan. "Everyone, it's been a long time. Ziju, how have you been?" Qi Yuan smiled disdainfully at Duan Ziju. After him, no one else walked out of the tunnel. At this moment, Qi Yuan also turned his neck and looked at the corner of the royal tower with a dissatisfied expression. That was a very special place. It was as if Qi Yuan shouldn't be standing on the battle stage with everyone else, as he was lowering his status. He should have appeared on top of the imperial tower, watching the battle below as a superior. Why are there only 5 people? After glancing over Jing Qinqi, Xianyuan Wuji, Jiang Zizai, Song Zijie and Qi Yuan, Xiaogua gradually frowned. They were supposed to challenge the top 10 experts of the martial emperor ranking in the competition for the top 10. However, only 5 of them appeared on the side being challenged. Where are the others? Yi Shuihan shouted at Gongsun Changxing, who was on the top floor of the royal tower. The competition for the top 10 will be divided into 3 rounds. In the first round, the 10 of you will challenge the 5 of them. Only by winning the challenge can the competition continue. Gongsun Changxing replied unhurriedly as he waved his hand at a certain spot in the imperial tower. In that empty spot, 3 extremely extraordinary figures suddenly appeared. The first one had a dignified appearance and wore a noble robe. He was Zhou Wudao of the East Continent. The second one had a strong back and a ferocious face. There was a scar at the corner of his eye. He was the chief disciple of the Zhanyue mansion, the eldest senior brother of Kill 1,000 Blades and Kill 100 Heads, Kill 1,000 Blades. As for the third one, he was the well-known crown prince of Northern Yen, Murong Zijuan. At this moment, Murong Zijuan met Qi Yuan's gaze and teased him, as if he was mocking Qi Yuan for standing on the battle stage instead of on top of the royal tower like himself. Ranked 3rd on the martial emperor ranking, the genius of the great Zhou royal family of the East Continent, Zhou Wudao. Ranked 4th on the martial emperor ranking, the personal disciple of the Zhanyue mansion's mansion master, Kill 1,000 Blades. Ranked 5th on the martial emperor ranking, Murong Zijuan, the crown prince of Northern Yen. Gongsun Changxing waved his horsetail whisk and pointed at Zhou Wudao and the other 2. Then he continued, "Only after you defeat Prince Qi Yuan and the other 2 can you continue to challenge Zhou Wudao and the other 2. As for the 2nd and 1st on the martial emperor ranking, you are not qualified to know their identities." These were the 3 rounds of challenges for today's top 10 competition. Aren't you looking down on us too much? Xiaogua was the first to stand out and express his dissatisfaction. Qin Yun's eyebrows were tightly knitted together in an instant. 10 against 5. He was clearly implying that Qi Yuan and the other 2 had the cultivation to defeat 2 of them at the same time. This is the rule set by Emperor Xiao. Those who are dissatisfied can withdraw from the competition. Gongsun Changxing's answer was unquestionable. Of course, there are not only 5 of them in the first round. There is another person. As soon as Gongsun Changxing finished speaking, a dazzling light bloomed in the middle of the battle stage. In the light, a small figure slowly walked out. This person had red lips, white teeth, and rosy cheeks. He was about 15 or 16 years old, but he had long white hair. It was the champion of the juvenile group, Lu Chou. After Lu Chou appeared, he arrogantly raised his head, gave Qin Hao a pinky finger, and forcefully poked downwards. The news of his appearance in the adult group competition had already spread, so no one was surprised. They were only full of expectations. "I said I would fight with you, so I will definitely stand in front of you. Qin Hao, cherish what little life you have left," Lu Chou said. The atmosphere instantly sunk into tension. "Qin Hao is my target. I advise you to get lost." Jiang Zizai's cold voice passed into Lu Chou's ears. Lucho turned back with dissatisfaction. Who do you think you are? You are courting death. Jiang Zizai's fist creaked as he clenched it. At this time, Gongsun Chongqing's voice sounded again. I don't need to repeat the rules, right? Next, the 10 of you will challenge the 6 of them. The right to challenge is in your hands. Prince Qi Yuan and the others have no right to choose. Now, you can choose your opponents at will. If that's the case, sorry, I forfeit. Suddenly, a voice of forfeiture sounded. Everyone turned to look and found that it was Qin Yun. Without giving anyone time to react, Qin Yun patted Qin Hao's shoulder and resolutely turned around to step down from the stage. This kind of competition is meaningless to me. Old cousin, little brother little Gua, Shui Han, it's up to you now. Qin Yun has his own pride and can't stand being looked down upon like this. Moreover, he indeed has no meaning in continuing to participate. He doesn't want to marry Xiao Han. Qin Yun is someone with a wife. Therefore, he became an expert in the southern region because Qin Yun wanted to help Qin Hao block the others. Now, his goal is basically completed. Qin Hao is also standing on the top 10 battle stage. Qin Yun feels that it's time for him to leave. I forfeit. Another voice sounded. It's Xing Er. I forfeit. Little Nine immediately chased after Xing Er and stepped down from the stage. I also forfeit. Chun Wanqin smiled at Qin Hao and Xiaogua. She clenched her small fists and said encouragingly, You guys can do it. This scene of forfeiture made Duan Ziju and Qi Yuan feel baffled. They are suddenly at a loss of what to do. Hee 6 against 6, now it's fair. Looking at the brothers standing beside him, Qin Hao watched Qin Yun and the others leave. Qin Hao completely understood the intentions of his old cousin and Wanqin. Chapter 10:22. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin Duan Ziju is defeated. I've been waiting for you to say that. Lucho spread his feet apart, and a burst of energy spread out from the soles of his feet. He was really afraid that Qin Hao would not choose him. Coward, trash, shameless. Now that Qin Hao had a candidate, Jiang Zizai, who was on the opposite side, was so angry that he was jumping around. He felt that Qin Hao and Lucho were clearly afraid of him, afraid of being beaten to death. And Lucho was so young, so his cultivation was definitely the weakest. Ha ha, Qin Hao, you disappoint me. You're picking a kid to beat up. If you have the ability, then hit me. Punch me in the face. What bullshit #1 martial artist of Western Liang. I really feel that it's not worth it for Princess Jingyue to have a favorable impression of a piece of trash. It's too disgusting. Jiang Zizai stood on the stage and ridiculed Qin Hao. Where did this crazy dog come from? Xianyuan Wuji couldn't stand it anymore and cursed. Forgive me for being blunt, but Brother Jiang is really rude. He's ranked in the top 10 of the Emperor Martial competition. I feel extremely ashamed. Zheng Qingqi hurriedly said. Jiang Zizai couldn't help but calm down. He also felt that he was too excited and anxious. If Qin Hao was beaten to death by the white-haired kid, then he wouldn't have to do anything. It would prove that Qin Hao was indeed trash. If Qin Hao won, then Jiang Zizai would have a chance to take revenge. So Jiang Zizai had never considered whether he would lose or not. Ha ha ha, sorry, I was too excited and couldn't help but want to kick this clown out of the sacred Emperor Martial competition. Sorry. After thinking it through, Jiang Zizai very magnanimously cupped his fists in all directions, making him look like a gentleman. Spit. Qi Xiaogua spat on the soles of Jiang Zizai's feet. He pointed at the other party and said, It's you. I challenge you. Because your skin is so thick that it makes people's hair stand on end. I can't help but want to tear it open to see what's inside. Previously, Xiaogua wanted to challenge Xianyuan Wuji. However, Jiang Zizai was too ostentatious. Melon Lord liked such ostentatious guys. You overestimate yourself. I'll take it. Jiang Zizai gladly agreed. At this moment, Yi Shuihan stood out and wanted to choose Xianyuan Wuji. Duan Ziju moved faster than Yi Shuihan as he came to the front of Xianyuan Wuji and said, "Man from proud God country in South Domain, I'm very interested in you. Dare you fight me?" "Oh, it's Prince Duan. I'll do as you say." Xianyuan Wuji nodded casually as if it didn't matter who challenged him. Anyway, he would win for sure. Yi Shuihan was a step slower. He looked around and realized that only Qi Yuan, Song Zijie, and Jing Qinqi were left. Song Zijie was obviously Song Ziang's target. Yi Shuihan didn't want to steal someone else's beauty. He pondered for a few seconds. His eyes rolled twice as a smile appeared on his lip. He cupped his fists at Jing Qinqi and said, "Brother Qinqi, I won't be polite then." Qi Yuan was ranked 5th. Jing Qinqi was ranked 10th. Yi Shuihan felt that Jing Qinqi should be easier to deal with than Qi Yuan. Facing Yi Shuihan's challenge, Jing Qinqi responded politely with eyes full of appreciation. Yi Shuihan gave him a gentle feeling which suited Jing Qinqi's taste. "Zijie, this day has finally come." At this moment, Song Ziang coldly walked to Song Zijie. "Hee, a vile spawn doesn't have the right to call me that. Let me clean up the house on behalf of my father." Song Zijie clenched his fist. An invisible flame ignited in their eyes. "Then, I don't have a choice?" Iron Crutchley frowned as he faced Qi Yuan and swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. "A cripple?" Qi Yuan's eyes widened. He had never imagined that he would be chosen by a cripple in the end. He felt that Duan Ziju should have chosen him. In the past, they had fought openly and secretly for Xiaohan, causing a lot of friction. "Ha ha ha!" Murong Zijuan's laughter resounded in the Imperial Tower. Qi Yuan couldn't help but feel more annoyed. He pointed at Iron Crutchley and said, "It's your misfortune to meet me." "No, no, no. It's my honor to meet Prince Qi Yuan," Iron Crutchley replied. As a commoner, he didn't dare to offend the Northern Qi imperial family. At this point, the matches were successful. Qin Hao vs Luqiu, Duan Ziju vs Xianyuan Wuji, Xiaogua vs Jiang Zizai, Yi Shuihan vs Jing Qinqi, Song Ziang vs Song Zijie, competing for the position of the next patriarch. Iron Crutchley vs Qi Yuan. The one who will fight the first match will stay. The rest will retreat to the spectator area. Gong Sun Chongxing shouted. "I'll fight the first match." Just when Qin Hao, Xiaogua, and Yi Shuihan were exchanging thoughts to decide who would fight first, Duan Ziju unexpectedly raised his arm. Seeing this, the others left Xianyuan Wuji and retreated down the stage. At this moment, Duan Ziju's expression turned solemn. Qi Yuan and Murong Zijuan's cultivation are on par, but Murong Zijuan might have an advantage in terms of physique. If I fight the two of them, I only have a 40% chance of winning. But judging from Qin Hao's performance in the Blue River Mountain, he has a 70% chance of defeating Murong Zijuan or Qi Yuan. Duan Ziju nodded. Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan couldn't pose a threat to Qin Hao. This was the reason why he didn't choose Duan Ziju. Duan Ziju couldn't see through Xianyuan Wuji's cultivation, but he instinctively felt threatened. "No matter what, I can't walk to the end and win the Emperor Martial competition for Jingyue. The only thing I can do now is to help Qin Hao test this person's cultivation." Duan Ziju sighed sorrowfully. He knew that Xiao Han didn't like him. For 5 years, he hadn't been able to win Xiao Han's favor. On the contrary, Xiao Han's yearning for Qin Hao had deepened to the point that she had lost herself. "If I can't get him, I'll just protect him silently, even if it means watching from afar. Now, it all depends on Qin Hao's performance." Duan Ziju extended his arms above his head and unleashed the power of a level 3 Yuan Venerate. His soul origin flame revolved around his body. With a sweep of his palm, an orange-yellow fireball blasted towards Xianyuan Wuji. The fireball got bigger and bigger along the way. This attack was much stronger than the one he had used to defeat Zhou Wudao's half-brother, Zhou Wuning. Is this the strength of the Northern Frontier's war monarch's son? I have to say that this is disappointing. Actually, you don't even need to get off the stage, because this move, Duan Ziju will definitely lose. Xianyuan Wuji's face stiffened. His 5 fingers flexed and a golden glow burst out from his palm. Everyone saw the phantom of a dragon claw fly out from his palm. This phantom was unusually swift and fierce. With a bang, it brazenly pierced through Duan Ziju's fireball and headed straight for Duan Ziju's chest. Not good. While everyone outside the arena was screaming in shock, Duan Ziju had already sensed the formidable might of the phantom dragon claw. His face couldn't help but turn pale. Suddenly, the orange-yellow flames burning on his body started to climb frantically and soar into the sky. He unleashed his maximum cultivation in an attempt to block his opponent's attack. 7 Ultimate Magnificent Blazing Flame, 5th Ultimate, open for me. Duan Ziju shouted with all his might as a 30-meter thick flame barrier formed around his body. Inside the barrier, 5 tyrannical orange-yellow flames revolved frantically. Duan Ziju's origin spirit is actually the Magnificent Blazing Flame, which is ranked 9th on the Exceptional Flame list. Furthermore, it's the ultimate 7 Ultimate Magnificent Blazing Flame. Qin Hao couldn't help but be deeply shocked. It was no wonder that Duan Ziju's flames were so formidable. When he was still a profound sage, he could destroy Phoenix Glass Island with a casual sweep of his hand. Actually, Duan Ziju was only a bit weaker than Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan. However, he was easily defeated by Xianyuan Wuji. At this moment, Qi Yuan and Murong Zijuan were watching Xianyuan Wuji with full of fear and dread. Even Kill Million Knives, who ranked 4th, couldn't help but clench his fists as he felt a great threat from Xianyuan Wuji. This person has the qualifications to fight me head-on. The only one who could remain calm was Zhou Wudao. Zhou Wudao licked his lips as he gazed at Xianyuan Wuji with amazement, as if he had discovered a new continent. Zhou Wudao couldn't help but tremble a bit, not out of fear, but out of excitement. Because Zhou Wudao finally found a worthy opponent in this Emperor Martial Arts competition. Ziju. Battle King Duan Zhanfei was stunned for a long time before he recovered his composure. With a flash, he appeared beside Duan Ziju. Qin Hao was not slow either. The moment Battle King arrived beside Duan Ziju, Qin Hao had also arrived. "I'm sorry, father. I've embarrassed you." Duan Ziju looked very painful as he clenched the place where he had been hit by Xianyuan Wuji. The flesh on his chest had turned dark and sunken in. He mustered his strength and tried to stand up. However, after struggling for a short while, he couldn't break free at all. From this, it could be seen that Xianyuan Wuji hadn't healed Duan Ziju's injuries. Even though Duan Ziju had been knocked off the stage, he was still firmly suppressed by Xianyuan Wuji. In father's heart, you will always be the best son. Duan Zhanfei's heart ached as he squatted down and poured his emperor qi into Duan Ziju's body to help him suppress his injuries. However, Duan Ziju's complexion didn't improve at all, which shocked Battle King once again. Xianyuan Wuji's lips curled into a proud smile as he sneered. "Duan Ziju, you're holding on." Upon seeing this, Qin Hao reached out his hand and channeled the power of nether-cleansing water into Duan Ziju's chest through his palm. The blackish-blue flesh on Duan Ziju's chest started to emanate a sacred, watery light. Duan Ziju immediately felt his body lighten and his pain lessen. However, the blackish-blue flesh on his chest still didn't fade away. "It's the power of the soul," Qin Hao muttered to himself. Then, his star system discovered that the illusory dragon claw was still inside Duan Ziju's body. The dragon claw was still emitting an evil dragon's roar as it continued to corrode Duan Ziju's internal organs. "Get the hell out!" Qin Hao roared as dragon roars echoed around him. His majesty was even stronger than the evil dragon claw in Duan Ziju's body. This was because Qin Hao's dragon soul belonged to a giant dragon. Following this, Qin Hao's palm, which was pressing down on Duan Ziju's chest, was suddenly covered by a layer of dense dragon scales. As he pulled with all his might, a wisp of white, soul-like gas was forcibly pulled out from Duan Ziju's body.